Greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It's been a very long one for myself. I find myself quite a bit exhausted, but for good reason, let me tell you. Today we're going to read The Magician, His Training and Work by W.E. Butler. We're going to begin at chapter 3, and we will attempt to go all the way to chapter 8. If not, we'll go at least to chapter 7, 6 or 7. Some very, very good quality information in this book. I love this author and his work, and I hope that you can feel a similar feeling after really getting some of this information that is provided here. Peace to everyone. Peace, Stub BT. Good to see you. Circle of Mystics, peace and greetings. Cosmic Traveler, peace. The Mental Goddess, peace, peace. Adam Davis, welcome. B. Fields, peace and greetings. Dara Holland, peace. Vincent Fiasco, welcome back, peace. Discover the Hero Within, peace, love, peace, and wisdom. Mo B, always good to see you. Ron Fiasco, peace. Just a little bit of a personal story. If you don't know, about 20 years ago, I was in a band. We were very metalcore. I did a lot of screaming, and I played the keyboards as well. So we've got this show coming up next Saturday. So probably won't be doing this book read next Saturday because I'll be performing. It's going to be a pretty big-sized show. So today we're doing some rehearsing. To be honest, I was practicing. I didn't go to sleep last night. Been up practicing all night and all day. So my voice feels a little bit hoarse, but I don't think that it sounds that hoarse. I mean, it might, but I sat down to check some things before this live stream, and I woke up at exactly 8 o'clock. I didn't set an alarm or anything, but I passed out, because I exerted a lot of energy. But I did definitely want to stress my gratitude for the subconscious mind, because that's one thing I've been noticing about the subconscious mind lately, is that the more that you put your faith and trust in your own ability, whether that's to know, to do, to try, to remember, any of that, if you put your faith in your subconscious mind and not your conscious mind, you'll find that the subconscious can actually be extremely reliable. Now, it takes a bit of trust, but if you really begin to put your faith in the subconscious mind and just try it, just test it, I think you'll surprise yourself. We've all had these experiences where you might have forgotten to set your alarm, and then you'll manage to wake up right in time. Whereas other times you'll set your alarm and you'll hit that snooze button and keep going. That's just one small example, but there's been a lot of examples the past 2 weeks for me where my subconscious mind has really pulled through and supported in ways that I did not anticipate. I think that's a expected byproduct of doing this kind of work, doing this magic. But yeah, here I am thinking that I wouldn't be able to sound as good as I did 20 years ago, or us as a band, and the back of my mind, instead of doubt, oh, you're gonna fail, you're gonna fuck up, my subconscious mind kept telling me, it's gonna be perfect, it's gonna be perfectly fine, don't worry, don't cause yourself unnecessary stress. And we get there and everything sounds great, everything sounds amazing. So I've got this newfound sense of happiness. So we're going to start on page 32, and we will begin with the chapter on the Tree of Life. So let's get with it. I like when my brain says, okay, so we're either going to read or play video games or do something else, and my subconscious mind is like, nope, we're going to sleep. And that rest that comes is usually a very, very recharging rest. All right, so let's get to it, shall we? Peace, peace, Tian Pomeroy, peace. Sunshine Chick, greetings, always good to see you. Hit the like button if you have not hit it already. I'm sure all my favorite people have already done that. And my new favorite people, let's go ahead and tap that like button if you like this information. All right. Oh yeah, I've got coffee. Perfect. Chapter 3, The Tree of Life. And I'm taking no risks this time. I got an entire extension cord outlet sitting right here with my phone plugged in, so we will not have any power mishaps. The Tree of Life. All occult traditions worthy of the name employ certain diagrams and pictorial devices in the training of their members. As we have already pointed out, the Western tradition is a composite one, embracing the mystery teachings of Greece, Egypt, Chaldea, and Israel. And because of this, it has a large store of such mandalas, as they are termed in the East. So remember, look at the word that he chose to use there. He said mandala. This isn't just a mandala. A mandala isn't just this, a shape inside of a square, right? This is a mandala too, very much so. These are mandalas, right? If you want to get jiggy with it, this is a mandala, right? Name brands and logos. Peace, Veronica Archaga. The lovely and wonderful Veronica. Great to see you. So he says that because of this composite tradition, because of all the different background influences, Greece, Egypt, Chaldea, and Israel, the Western tradition has become a large store of such mandalas, as they are termed in the East. But the mandala, par excellence, is that which is known as the Tree of Life. And this comes from the Chaldean and Hebrew esoteric schools. It has been referred to as the mighty, all-embracing glyph of the universe and the soul of man. And this is a very good description of it. It is, in itself, a complete diagram of a philosophy which is known as the Kabbalah. And at the time, it can be used in connection with the various pantheons and philosophies of Egypt and Greece, as well as those of the Northlands and the Middle East. It is an occult Rosetta Stone, which, like the original Rosetta Stone, enables us to translate languages previously unknown to us into one with which we are familiar. As the reader will be aware, it was the fact that the original Rosetta Stone contained a decree which had been written in 3 languages, one of which was the Egyptian, which at the time, when one of Napoleon's officers found the stone, was an unknown language. Wow, picture that. In the West, we haven't even been able to decipher or understand the Egyptian Kemet hieroglyphs until very recently. The key to it having been lost. By deciphering the Latin and Greek inscriptions, which were identical in meaning, it became possible to commence the translation of the ancient Egyptian characters. And from this start, the work has gone on until the language of ancient Khmer is no longer unknown. I've never heard it called Khmer. That's interesting. Xander Promio, peace, peace. Apparently you're the only one on the internet who gets a pass in calling me that word. Oh yeah, Ron Fiasco says like alchemy. Okay, I have heard that before. Ancient Kimmy. So, with the Tree of Life, once we have found the meaning of the Hebrew names upon it, we can place on the tree, to use a technical term, any other system of philosophy and be able to see how it will work out. This, in itself, is of great importance, but there are many other uses which may be made of the tree. It is essential to realize, however, that the tree is not a map of the undiscovered country of either the soul of man or the universe in which he lives, but it is rather a diagram of the mutual relationship of the underlying forces of both. That's key to remember, especially if you aren't well versed in this information. If it's new to you, or if you're somewhat of a beginner, please understand what he just said there. The Tree of Life is not a map. It's referred to as a map, but don't think of it as a map, especially if you're beginning. It's not about this place and that place and you're trying to go to this place. Not physically, not even metaphysically, not psychically or emotionally or any of that. Listen to what he says here. He says that the Tree of Life is not a map of the undiscovered country of either the soul of man or the universe in which he lives. Well, what is it then? It is a diagram of the mutual relationship of the underlying forces of both. Okay? It's a diagram of the mutual relationship of the underlying forces of the soul and the universe. Okay? Together with the tree, we have inherited a large body of philosophy based thereon, and it was the mutilated fragments of this philosophy which formed the background of medieval magic that so many of us know and love, or at least are fascinated with. Page 33, look at that. Several books on the Tree of Life have been published in recent years. The most important of these are mentioned in the bibliography at the end of this book. For this reason, it is not proposed to give a detailed exposition of the tree in these pages. But what is intended is to give the magical apprentice another point of view with regard to this ancient glyph. He's got a pretty decent selection of books listed at the end. I have them all. I read most of them. You know, we've gone over the mystical Kabbalah at least 2 or 3 times on this channel alone. And we'll continue to do so. Usually do it around this time of the year, but we're going to focus on this book instead. Briefly stated, the tree is a wonderful diagram of forces, not things. Let me say that again. Briefly stated, the tree is a wonderful diagram of forces, not things. If we consider the universe in which we live, and then consider the nature of our own immediate contact with it, we come to see we are living in a universe in which one of the supreme manifestations of the underlying reality is that phenomenon which we term vibration. All things, all forces, and all beings are finding expression in the universe by means of vibrations. When anyone speaks, the vibrations of his voice are created in the air. When the light vibrations are affecting our optical machinery. The vibrations of sound affect our ear, and there is cause to believe that the sense of smell does not entirely depend on the wide diffusion of small particles of the substance smelt. When we consider both light and sound, we find they have an ascending scale of frequency, and into this scale, all manifestations of light and sound can be fitted. So the whole universe in which we live is the theater of an infinity of interweaving forces, and these forces are at work in both the objective and the subjective levels of both the universe and the soul of man. The Kabbalah declares there is an enormous field of acting and reacting forces and lives, and this field of the concourse of forces is generally known as the Adam Kadmon, the heavenly man. Boom. That's a gem right there. That's a gem right there. Especially if you've heard that word, the Adam Kadmon, which, if you study this information, you should have. So just like the Kabbalah is not a map or a place, it's a system of relationships. The Adam Kadmon isn't necessarily a giant dude floating in space. The Adam Kadmon is the collection of these forces. He describes it as this enormous field of acting and reacting forces and lives. This field is known as the Adam Kadmon. That's great. That's great, right? That's the soul of man. That's the soul of the world. Man, few people put it so plain. Few people put it so plain. He says this about the scale of manifestations of light. This is not to dismiss the quantum hypothesis of light. It has its value both in physics and in magic, but a consideration of it here would carry us too far from their chosen field. Stray Panther, peace and greetings. Ron Fiasco says the Garden of Pomegranates is worth going over as well. The Tree of Life, both written by Israel Regardie. I do love Dion Fortune, of course. Yeah, as a matter of fact, one of the books in the bibliography he mentions is The Garden of Pomegranates, which is another great book describing the tree. From an author with experience, not an author who just read some other books and copied what was in it. Stray Panther, Al-Dicky, peace, peace. Matthew Watson, peace and greetings. Circle of Mystics says, I thought the Kabbalah could be considered a map of the universe. I have never seen it spelled that way. Yeah, and that, I think, has been the running description for a while. But just based on what Butler has just said here, I think that's a much better explanation. Because when we think of it as a map, we go into our own memory banks and think about maps as we use them, right? We've got a piece of paper or a screen that shows the location of different places that are separated by space and have to be traveled through by time. But the tree doesn't work like that. The different points on the tree, we simultaneously inhabit. We simultaneously inhabit all those points, all those paths, some more than others. It's a balance. You might have some more of this, which would result in less of that, which is why there's this talk about left-hand path, right-hand path, and the center, the middle pillar balancing everything. Fiasco says, absolutely, which is my problem with many Llewellyn authors. They usually rehash many things. Most New Age authors don't really do it for me. I agree with you on that sentiment. I don't really dig too many of the new authors. Mainly because I've read the books that they're referring to, or parroting from. I think that's okay, though, they serve a purpose, right? It's okay for people who are not well-read, people who might just be getting into this information, because we're dealing with a living tradition, and if an author does it right, if one of these new age authors does it right, they're preserving and carrying over what these original authors wrote. Even a book like this, or a book by Regardie, or Crowley, or any of the older authors from the 1900s, they're inevitably going to be speaking in a different language. So for most people of the modern world, it's going to have to be retranslated in modern language. All right? Consider the generation of young people now who might be interested in magic. They're not going to sit down and read a lot of those books. I mean, our attention span has been permanently altered. So this right here is difficult enough. I think we need those New Age authors to rehash. It's just that we're dealing with human beings. So the integrity has to come under scrutiny. And it's hard to tell if you haven't read the book yet. Aldin, that's a good point. Aldin says, in my experience, the New Age authors lead me to the sources. Exactly, right? I wouldn't even know of this book if it wasn't for some of the newer authors. And if you use your magic correctly, you can have the forces that be direct you to the material that you need. We've talked about that before. I've created servitors and I've used goetic spirits specific because I've spent so much money on books, and I spent time on books that were a waste of my time. So I ended up utilizing these spirits, right? And I have charged them with directing me exactly to source material and material that is going to improve my understanding on the subject. I don't want to waste any more time on somebody's money grab. And the spirits have certainly come through for me since I have charged them to do so. Now it's created an etheric pattern where these books will come to me regardless of any kind of ritual or anything like that. They'll just show up. Some of them have been in my library, like this one, and haven't really had as much attention as some of the others. But use your powers. Use them. Star Lion, peace. Let's get back to this text. So this paragraph was great, right? This was great. As somebody who does understand this content, if you're somebody who doesn't, I'm going to read this paragraph again because it's very important. We're talking about vibration, we're talking about the tree of life, and we're talking about Adam Kadmon, okay? So I'm going to read this again. Briefly stated, the tree is a wonderful diagram of forces, not things. If we consider the universe in which we live, and then consider the nature of our own immediate contact with it, we come to see we are living in a universe in which one of the supreme manifestations of the underlying reality is that phenomena which we term vibration. All things, all forces, and all beings are finding expression in the universe by means of vibrations. When anyone speaks, the vibrations of his voice are carried by the air. When we see, the light vibrations are affecting our optical machinery. The vibrations of sound affect our ear, and there is cause to believe that the sense of smell does not entirely depend on the wide diffusion of small particles of the substance smelt. When we consider both light and sound, we find they have an ascending scale of frequency. And into this scale, all manifestations of light and sound can be fitted. Right? So imagine there's a scale of all vibrations that we interpret as light and sound, from the lowest to the highest. If you've ever worked with music, on an engineering scale or a production scale, you'll know that you have this diagram of the EQ, the equalizer, and you can see the different frequencies that are within the range of human hearing, from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, right? You can see each specific frequency of vibration that the human ear can hear. And if you know what you're doing, you can get in there and tweak a specific vibration. If something doesn't sound right or something sounds good and needs to come up, you can literally go in and boost that specific frequency of sound. The same thing with light. If you've edited videos, right, there's a way to pull up a diagram that shows you the balance of light and color, and you can adjust it, right? So this science of influencing human perception has been figured out a long time ago, and we have the technology now to prove it. There are masters in these fields. But what he's saying here is that there's a wide range of vibration of all sound and all light that goes from low to high, right? So he says, when we consider both light and sound, we find they have an ascending scale of frequency, and into this scale, all manifestations of light and sound can be fitted. So the whole universe in which we live is a theater of an infinity of interweaving forces. And these forces are at work in both the objective and subjective levels of both the universe and the soul of man. The Kabbalah declares there is an enormous field of acting and reacting forces and lives. And this field of the concourse of forces is generally known as the Adam Kadmon, the heavenly man. Bing, bam, boom. greetings. Ella says, ah, nice bedtime story. That's right. Sit back, shut the conscious mind completely off, and allow your subconscious to remember. To remember. Elfiana says, live for the unicorn while learning about the mysteries of the universe. Oh, yeah. Gotta put it all together. By the way, what color was that unicorn's mane? Ghillie Suit 047, peace. ZJ, peace and greetings. In the body of this heavenly man, we literally live and move and have our being, though we must be careful not to identify the body of the heavenly man with his essential nature. Check out the Kabbalion reference. We live and move and have our being, right? There's been quite a few Kabbalion references in this book. Truly, in the midst... Oh, well, let me go back one more time. We must be careful not to identify the body of the heavenly man with his essential nature. As Framestar Film said in the last live stream, the map is not the territory. Truly, in the midst of the concourse of forces, we exist, and equally truly in that eminent spirit, which is the heavenly man himself, we human spirits subsist, since, as the Greek poet wrote, we are also his offspring. We are living parts of a living organism, an organism which is pervaded and is actually created by the eternal spirit, who is at the same time immanent in it and transcendent to it. And as we move forward with this type of information, just consider what he's saying here, right? How all these vibrations that exist, that cause life, that form a matrix and a basis for life, think about that. Think of the neutrality of it, right? Think of how it is simply vibration. And then pair that up against this concept of these evil aliens or bad guys or demonic spirits out to get you and hurt you, right? Like, those two things don't exist in the same place. It's hard to believe in one and the other. It's one or the other. Either you live in a universe that is an individual soul where everything is connected because it is all one thing, or you live in a universe that you're separate from, filled with hostile forces waiting to hurt you. One of those belief systems is useful and appropriate. One of those belief systems is not very useful or appropriate. Stray Panther says, Dr. Delbert Blair stated we were mitochondria, a part of a bigger being. God bless and keep you, Deacon. God bless and keep you. Listen at Ron Fiasco. Ron Fiasco says the universe isn't conspiring against you, it's conspiring for you. Purple, now it's blue. I wish this is how school was. I'm so glad that you're paying attention. Awesome possum. Circle of Mystics says fractal holographic universe. Ron Fiasco says that's why the book I'm working on uses popular concepts such as Final Fantasy eons or summons as a paradigm that younger readers will instantly recognize. Yeah, I think that's a very wise choice. You got to speak the language of the people you're talking to. Speaking the language of the people you're talking to is more important than you trying to say what you're trying to say. Because if you don't speak the language, you're not going to have much of an audience anyway. By experience over thousands of years, the illuminated mystics of Egypt and Chaldea, from whom this system is derived, worked out a system of notation which would enable them to classify some of the forces with which they had come into contact. And so gradually, a body of knowledge was formed, which could be handed down to succeeding generations of students. The very name QBL signifies from mouth to ear, i.e., it was an oral tradition, never written down until the school of Moses de Leon first gave the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, and the Zohar, the Book of Splendor, to the outer world. But although the arcane knowledge was passed down in oral form, there was also elaborated a diagram by means of which the relationships existing between the various forces of the universe could be deduced. The diagram or glyph is known as the Otz Chaim, or the Tree of Life. So once again, this Tree of Life is a diagram of the relationships of these forces, not a place in space. A diagram of the relationship of these forces of the universe. That's beautiful. We've never seen anything like that outside of magic. You could even look at the Tree of Life of Science, where they have this diagram of all these different animal species, right? Even that's not even the same thing as what we're talking about here. We're talking about a very comprehensive, holistic mandala, sigil, the theory of everything. They're still looking for a theory of everything, but it's been discovered a long time ago. A cynic once said that words were used not to convey our thoughts, but to conceal them. Ooh. Up to a certain point, of course, he was correct. But the purpose for which spoken language evolved was to convey information from one individual to another. In the infancy of the race, a certain unconscious exercise of telepathy was the basis of communication. But with the evolution of the cerebrospinal nerve system, the images which had hitherto been transmitted by telepathic means were now linked with certain sounds. And when you really think about it, there's no other choice but for us to have originally been telepathic, because we didn't show up here with spoken word, yet we still managed to communicate and build civilization. So early man was definitely telepathic. Like, when you really think about it, we didn't have words, so how were we able to do the things that we did? You're gonna believe that it was just grunts and pointing around like you know, a cartoon caveman? Nah. The human being has the potential for incredible feats, and we always have been full of potential. Even though we may not show it in most of our lives, the potential is always there, whether we can speak or not. And just think about people who have one of their senses impaired, whether it's their vision impaired, their hearing impaired. Typically what happens is that energy that would be used for that particular sense spreads out and allocates and is more amplified in another part. So the human organism finds a way. The subconscious mind finds a way. Circle of Mystics says W.E. Butler has a book that discusses telepathy and speaks about the mechanics and how the thoughts travel along water molecules to the intended individual. Oh man, that's nice. Very nice. I got the OG version of these books. I don't know how I managed to come across like the OG versions, but yeah. How to Develop Clairvoyance by W.E. Butler. Everybody's Guide to Supernormal Sense Perception. So just looking at what we're reading now, just imagine how clearly he elucidates about telepathy and clairvoyance. And there's another one where he's talking about other spiritual gifts. I'll have to dig that one out. But let's focus on this one. That's it. Psychometry, clairvoyance, and telepathy. That's it. Thank you. So, in the infancy of the race, a certain unconscious exercise of telepathy was the basis of communication. But with the evolution of the cerebrospinal nervous system, the images which had hitherto been transmitted by telepathic means were now linked with certain sounds. So arose the sequence of thought which we now use: perception, concept, word. Think about that. He said, so arose the sequence of thought which we now use. Do you ever consider that you learned to think the way that you do? When you're by yourself in your private time and you're processing life, you learn to think that way, to receive these sensory impressions, to interpret them as a symbol, and then to attach words to it. We learned how to do that. We didn't come into the world doing that. When I think about that, that opens up so many other possibilities of how the mind can work. Because that process that we've learned to think in is extremely limited, because we have to condense what we perceive into something that we can boil down into a word. You ever have a concept in your head and you're fighting for a few seconds to try to figure out the word for it? You know, you're snapping your, what's it called? What's it called, right? You already have it in your head, but you're struggling to limit it, shave it off, and boil it down into a single word. That's interesting. Where it is a question of passing on information, then the process is concept and then word. But it was perception by one or other of the physical senses which gave rise to the concept. Let us explain this in more detail. The little grandson of the present writer is now just beginning to talk, and his efforts give a good indication of the process at work in his mind. He has evidently one or two pretty clear concepts which have been built up by his sense perception, but they are very comprehensive. All living animals are Sals. The name of the household dog is Sally. So all living animals are Sals. All men are dads, and all plants are flowers. It is evident that each of these very comprehensive concepts will have to be split up into many more subdivisions, but the general concept has been built and linked with a particular word or sound. Word sound. Again, very interesting information. Look at how we've learned as children, and how we symbolically group things together in a category. What he's describing here, like you said, is his grandson, right? They have a dog named Sally. So all living creatures he calls Sals, right? Because that's what he knows. He knows his father. He calls him dad. So all men that he sees, those are dad, right? You get what he's saying here? All plants are flowers, right? This is how we develop our personal language, our personal vocabulary. We start very general, and the longer we live, the more data that we receive, we start to specify. Some people don't specify. That's why you can, or I can post something that says the word demons in the title, and here come these people running in. Oh, demons are evil. You're gonna go to hell, and I'm gonna pray for you, and all this other stuff, because they have this general understanding, where my understanding is very specific. So oftentimes when your language is specific and you try to talk to someone who has a general understanding, the message doesn't translate very well. Because while you may be talking about blue, you might actually be talking about cyan or turquoise or periwinkle, but the person you're talking to only knows blue. So there's a lot of things that will be lost in translation. Peace, Phallus. Valis says, Travis, do you have an idea about how to use the tree of life to perform the exercise of pranayama? Well, pranayama will be performed with your physical body and your etheric body. If you were to attempt to use the tree of life to do this type of breathing exercise, I guess you could use the tree as a visual diagram as you allow the breath and the prana to travel in and out, up and down. Symbolic. Now, all our lives, we are constantly varying the mental concepts which we have built up throughout our existence, either expanding their meaning or narrowing down according to custom, temperament, or conditions. But it must be clearly kept in mind that the bases of all these concepts are the perceptions of the five physical senses. They provide the imagery which defines and forms the various concepts. So what he's saying here also is that even if we have a general understanding or a specific understanding, where these understandings originate is our five senses. So before we even get to grouping these concepts or words into categories, we have to understand that they come from something that we saw, something that we heard, smelt, tasted, or felt. That's how it starts. Even when we come to so-called abstract thinking, the same process is at work, though the connection is more difficult to observe. Now, it used to be a dictum of the psychologists, and still is for some of them, that nothing exists in the mind which has not come in by the gateways of the physical senses. This we now know to be incorrect, but if we alter the statement to read, there is nothing in the mind which has not come in through the senses, then we are nearer to the truth. For the superphysical senses are also recording their perceptions in the mind. I'll read that again. There is nothing in the mind which has not come in through the senses. Interesting. Now, it used to be there is, however, one great difference between the physical and the superphysical senses. The first group, the physical senses, derive their images from the external world. The second, the superphysical senses, derive their images from the inner worlds. Since the personality has been built up by reaction to physical stimuli, all its concepts are in terms of physical objects and beings, and concepts which are built in terms of the inner planes are meaningless to it. Let's run it back. Since the personality has been built up by reaction to physical stimuli, ego. Since the personality has been built up by reaction to physical stimuli, all its concepts are in terms of physical objects and beings. And concepts which are built in terms of the inner planes are meaningless to it. Did you understand that? Did you understand that? Really look at that. Really look at that, because this is what another thing that I've been saying for quite a while, that the yoga books have talked about, this sense of self, this ego. I've said that the ego is built up of the five senses and the memories that it's attached to it, right? The lower self, the conscious mind. Look at what he said here. He says that is built up by reaction to physical stimuli. So if you want to know what the ego is, ahamkara, the lower self, look at yourself in the mirror, right? And understand that everything that you know about the world that has been derived from your five senses, this is the lower self. You're not taking that anywhere outside of this world, right? You die and you go to heaven, you're not taking any of this stuff with you. When the Bible talks about, a wealthy man and his treasure being left on earth, I don't remember the verse, but this creature, this concept that we've created, doesn't leave this place. That's why it fights so hard to survive. And what's it built out of? Everything that you've seen with your five senses and the memories attached to them. Now, when you get information from the inner planes, right? Now we're coming into somewhat of a conflict. Something about you cannot serve two masters, right? So if you've got two selves now, you got this outer self which is created by the world and your response to the world. That's your outer self, and it believes it's alive, but it is an illusion. Then you've got an inner self that has existed before and will continue to exist after. When this inner self begins to communicate with you and convey information, the outer self oftentimes doesn't like to even have that conversation. You'll do everything you can to distract yourself, to ignore, right? When you know it's time to sit and meditate, when you know it's time to study, when you know it's time to do your ritual, when you know it's time, your outer self is going to come up with everything it can do to distract you, right? I'm not telling you this. This is something that we all go through. Why is that? Because we're dealing with two different selves with two different intentions. And Ron Fiasco says, my mom used to say that if you can think of it, it means it exists somewhere. Absolutely. If it can enter into the mind, it already exists, period. Ron Fiasco says, that's incredibly deep. I wonder if the Hebrew letters only exist in the astral after you learn them. Let's keep going. Christopher Ramjatan, peace, peace. Welcome, welcome back. This is good, clean information. Good, clean information. So the first group derived their images from the external world. The second group derived their images from the first group derived their images from the external world. The second from the inner worlds. Since the personality has been built up by the reaction to physical stimuli, all its concepts are in terms of physical objects and beings, and concepts which are built in terms of the inner planes are meaningless to it. One often meets people who bewail their lack of power to bring through into consciousness the knowledge gained on the levels of the inner planes. Yet, curiously enough, it very often happens that they have actually brought through a great deal of such knowledge. But because the concepts are built up of a different order to those built up through the physical senses, they remain unnoticed by the conscious self. Man, too many gems in this chapter alone. We're only on the third or fourth page. This is the explanation why you have trouble remembering your dreams. Think about it now. When you're awake, you're recording all of your experiences with these five senses. It's a language you understand, right? But when you go to sleep and dream, while you're in the dream, it is very realistic. It's very real. It's very real. But you're recording that experience with different senses. You're not recording your dream with your eyes and your ears. You're not recording your dream on that same language. Just like a computer is built on language. You got Mac and you got Windows. While they can still run the same types of programs, they're built upon a different language. So if I just take Mac code and put it into a Windows computer, or if I take a Windows code and put it into Mac, it's not going to register as intelligible, right? So if there's an app that works on Windows and I want to bring it to Mac, you literally have to recode it in a language that Mac understands. Same thing happens with your dreams versus your waking life. It's difficult for most people to bring their waking life into their dreams and their dreams into their waking life. What do I mean by bringing your waking life into your dreams? Well, don't you want to be conscious and aware when you're dreaming? You got to learn the dream code, just like you've got to learn either working with a Mac operating system or a Windows operating system. You'll get the same programs. I can use Chrome, I can use Adobe Premiere on Mac, but it's written in a different code than what's written with Windows. Likewise, when you dream, That information is being coded and recorded in a specific language. And if you don't learn the language of dream, the language of the subconscious mind, it will be difficult to translate it into waking world language. That's why it starts to dissolve. Because when you first wake up and come out of that dream, it's fresh. You just experienced it. But if you don't have a way to record it, it slowly dissolves because you're transitioning to a different operating system. You can't read it anymore because you're going to a different computer. Does that make sense? When your brain switches over like that, you're speaking a different language. Now there's a delicate balance when it comes to learning how to run both programs at once, or should I say, it's a delicate balance to understand. Let's put it this way. What if there was a source code that both the dream ran on top of and waking life ran on top of? If you understand that source code that the dream is built on top of and the waking life is built on top of, now you can start to see that there is crossover. Now, training like this book is necessary because that crossover, if it isn't structured properly, can bring complications. Do you think it would be... Have you ever stayed up for an extended amount of days? Like 3, 4, 5, 6 days? What starts to happen when you stay up for too long? What starts to happen when you stay up for too many days without sleep? What coding does your mind start to run on? You didn't add anything. What you're actually doing is you're taking away, right? When you stay up for too long, you're starting to chip away at the code that you run on in your waking life. And what's underneath that code? Stray Panther says you go insane. Well, something happens with the mind. Something happens with how you interpret reality, right? WT says hallucinations. Something happens when you start to remove that code. So there's something that's there already that the conscious mind is running on top of. What if you could find a way to understand that language? And I'm not suggesting that you stay up for weeks. What I'm suggesting is that there's already a code running that the conscious mind is built on top of, that the dreams are also built on top of. And that's what we're learning how to speak. We're learning how to speak with the language that everything else is built on top of, the source. Like he said earlier, the Rosetta Stone. How do we communicate with the subconscious mind? Does anybody know, or does anybody have any suggestions? Does anybody have any guesses or learned anything in simple terms? Now, don't give me a paragraph. What are some ways that you can communicate with that subconscious mind? In fact, the simpler that you can say it may illustrate the depth of your understanding on this subject. You see? So this isn't a waste of time. This is information that you can put to use. This is information that you can put to use. What good is it to learn about the clip off and these demonic spirits or whatever else? What good is it to learn about all that stuff if you cannot use it, if you can't work with it, if you can't apply it, if you can't interpret it, right? Because if you're just collecting information and learning all that stuff, but you don't know how to use it, all that information isn't penetrating. It's just going to that external self, that ego self. That's what we call an armchair occultist. When the external self, when that ego self is collecting data, but you don't know how to activate it, right? What you want is for that inner self to get this information so it can remember. See, the inner self isn't learning. As I read this stuff, I'm not reading it to your ego. There's a part of you that knows this information. That's why the hell you come here every week. It's not because you're trying to learn. You say that, but you're coming here to be reminded. Check. Let me know if that resonates. Let me know if I'm talking like a madman. You think you're here to learn, but what's actually happening is that as you get these words and you start forming these concepts in your head, something's going to trigger that inner self and says, yo, that's me. This book's talking about me. Not no damn demiurge coming to eat me. Or whatever the boogeyman is this week. Whatever the spiritual boogeyman is. You are the demiurge. You are everything that you're talking about. You're everything that you're talking about. So if you build a world of warfare for yourself, full of enemies, that's you. That's all you. And you can't include or involve anybody else with it. That's you. You do that because you want to. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Darkness divine, peace, peace. What says spiritual boogeyman is a good Tinder handle? I don't know, you might scare some of the conspiracy theorists off. All right, where we at? So yeah, your dreams, your waking life, two different operating systems. But what if there's something underneath, right? So yeah, curiously enough, it very often happens that they have actually brought through a great deal of such knowledge, but because the concepts are so built up, are of a different order to those built up through the physical senses, they remain unnoticed by the conscious self. So check that out also. Even if you just remember a sliver of your dream. See, I learned this a long time ago. Somebody very wise helped me to understand that you don't need to remember your whole dream. What you remember is literally perfect enough. So if you have this fantastic dream and you're doing all this great stuff, but as you wake, you don't remember it. All you remember is that you saw a squirrel with a cape on and it told you about what's on the McDonald's dollar menu. If that's all you remember about your dream, that was literally the part that your subconscious mind thought was most important. Take that and run with it. Don't beat yourself up and try to rack your mind trying to figure out the rest of it. Take what you got and make the most of it. Because on a level, see, here's the thing. You didn't forget your dream. The conscious mind didn't get it because he came late to the party. The rest of you still knows the dream. All the conscious mind needed out of that whole experience was the squirrel with the cape on talking about the dollar menu. All right, so now the levels of the astral light have been worked upon by the mind of man, and the earth imagery has been imposed upon the sensitive astral substance. And so it happens that general descriptions of the inner planes, such as are given by clairvoyance or communicated through mediumistic sensitives, are relatively true, since they describe what we may term the humanity-conditioned levels of astral light. So there are levels of the astral plane that are terraformed by competent psychics, spiritualists, mediums, occultists, witches, whatever you want to call them. There's territories of the astral plane that have been shaped and formed by people like us who go there intentionally and try to make sense of it. That's why in the occult, there's the lower astral and the higher astral. You may have heard me talk about the lower astral and the higher astral. You may have heard Dion Fortune talk about that. When you're looking at the Tree of Life, the lower astral we could constitute to the realms of Hod and Netzach, and the higher astral we can constitute to the realm of Tifereth. Darkness Divine. This book is called Magic, or I should say, The Magician, His Training and Work, by W.E. Butler. IDKDKDF, peace. IDKDKDF says, I made a list of correspondences of my daily routine, and what I'm finding is I'm already of the things I seek and that which I don't seek. The dimension that it's demonstrating may appear different, but nevertheless, Yes, yes. And when you start paying attention to yourself, when you start paying attention to your patterns, when you start taking an active role in understanding your life, you'll find that you're not very far from the things that you're seeking. You're not very far from the things that you're looking for, and that you do actually know more than you give yourself credit for. I started off this video giving praise to my subconscious mind. Oh, I wouldn't be able to do that if I wasn't paying attention. Pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to your patterns. Pay attention to the symbols that you come across and how you interpret them. This is the greatest book to study, right? The book of your life. Because like what he just said, you got this outer self, and you got this inner self. If you can't find this book, if you can't afford some of the other books, that doesn't mean that you've missed out. What these books, what the original books are telling you to do is to pay attention. It's one thing I tell my son every time. I might try to teach him a bunch of stuff, but I've decided that the main message that I'm going to try to really implement into him while he's young is pay attention. Pay attention. Don't let that video game and that YouTube dull your senses, take you out of the world. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Yeah, you can have fun. Yeah, you can do this, that, and the third, but pay attention too. Aldin says, the breakdown you made of God witnessing all possible experiences was so deep, I can somewhat grasp it intellectually, but experientially, it's even less comprehensible. We are that being, but grounding it in my daily experiences is an art. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And when I meditate on that concept, it has gotten scary before, right? Because I really started to see how everything in my life is a reflection of what I'm thinking anyways. Like, there is no outside force imposing upon me. Everything that I perceive, I catalog it, I define it, I put it somewhere. And those catalogs, those definitions, those placements have an effect on me, which I then in turn react to. So there's nobody outside hurting me or doing anything to me. It's me reacting to myself. And it can get scary when you really see the operating system of your own mind. If you really see it, it can get kind of scary because you start to understand you really are in the driver's seat. You can't blame Joe Biden anymore. You can't blame the Illuminati anymore. You can't blame the reptilians. You're in the driver's seat no matter what you perceive. Because check it out. If I can reframe spiders from being something to be scared of to being symbols and harbingers of great fortune, if I can do that, you can reframe your demiurge, your reptilian. You can reframe your freemate, whatever your enemy is. You can reframe that to something that's beneficial to you, right? Because understand, if you have created this external enemy that you're fighting against, all that is, more than likely, is an echo of your rebellion against authority because of how you were raised. You might not have liked your parents or whoever represented authority to you. As a baby, you didn't know about no damn demiurge or no Illuminati. All you knew was, I don't like my dad telling me what to do. I don't like my mom telling me what to do. So that created a reflective pattern of rebellion against authority. It doesn't go anywhere if you don't remove it. So you just replace those symbols now. You can't hurt your parents as a child, just like you can't hurt the Illuminati as an adult. You simply replaced and switched out the symbols, right? Right? Or is there some group out there that you have pledged personal war against, and how far are you going to go with that? How far are you going to go with that? Listen, I didn't say these things didn't exist. I didn't say that. What I said is you're in the driver's seat, and if you choose to go to war with something that you can't even touch or see, and if you really were at war with these things, they'd take you out long before you had a chance to blink. So what are we doing here? What are we doing? What are we doing? LOMG TV, peace. Long time no see, brother. continue. Now, the levels of the astral light have been worked upon. Okay, we said that. But if we wish to study the basic forces of the astral light, then we have to use some form of concept based, not upon optical or sensory properties, such as size, weight, hardness, color of sound. Not that stuff, right? If we wish to study the basic forces of the astral light, then we have to use some form of concept based upon pure relationship. So what's the astral plane? It's not a place that you're going to walk around and see and smell, right? Despite what the Facebook groups tell you, it's a place that's based upon relationship. That's why you can move things in the astral plane regardless of where you are or when you are, because the astral plane is based upon pure relationship. I know that's a little bit difficult to grasp, but the astral plane is not a place that you float into and you have to travel over here and you have to do this over there. That's not quite how it works. That's the physical plane you're thinking of. That's the physical plane. You're trying to bring that physical coding into a place that this operating system is a little bit different. The astral plane is based on pure relationship. It must, of course, be remembered that the mind will always use images of some kind or other, and if the waking consciousness has no stock images by which it may realize such a form of perception, it will use some of the sensory images derived from the action of the physical senses. This is quite all right, so long as we clearly understand that such images are being used in a representative capacity and are not the actual things perceived by the inner senses. So look, if you go into your astral state in your dream world and you see some kind of threat, right? You might be chased by a dragon or an octopus, or maybe you find a lover and you have an extraordinary, impossible time. That doesn't mean that you faced a dragon or you had astral sex. Those experiences were symbols pulled from your subconscious mind, because that subtle part of you understands that that's the best way you're going to remember the experience, the best way you're going to interpret the experience. But there's symbols that represent something else. Another reason to not be afraid of these so-called dark spirits, because they are symbols of forces at play that you are in contact with. You don't just experience certain entities if you're not already in contact with them. Oh, I've been cursed. Oh, somebody put these negative entities on me. Can you get them off of me, Trav? Well, they're with you for a reason. This is a chapter I'm definitely gonna have to go back over. There's so much packed in these few pages. Man. All right, let's keep going, because I don't want to stick on it too long. I wanted to get through 5 chapters, but I don't know if that's going to happen. And by the way, here is a diagram of the tree. You've seen it before, especially if you've been watching my channel at all. But at the top, you got Ein, Ein Sof, and Ein Sof R. Universe B. Kether, which is the first path, the first state of consciousness. Hakma, Bina, Chesed, Ibra, Tifereth, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malkuth. That's what they're called. Those are some names used to refer to them. Earth, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, all the stars of the constellation, the entire universe, the black hole in the center, and everything outside of it. And each one of these paths are representatives of the relationships between these different states of consciousness. So again, it's not a place, this isn't a map. You don't start here and then move there, and you got to get to here, or you didn't start here and then come down here. That's how a lot of people think of it, because we're used to looking at maps. But in essence, this is all simultaneous. It's all happening at once. it's all stacked on top of each other, wrapped around each other. The best way that I like to visualize this, picture this lowest Sephiroth. Picture like I stick a pin in it right there, and then I flick this so it rotates around and around in a circle around the central point. I think that's a better diagram of it, because what you're seeing here is that while Malkuth is our central experience, if you look deep enough, you'll see that it's wrapped around a layer of what's happening in Yesod. We can say that's your imagination. And even that's wrapped around in a layer of what I just called the lower astral plane, which is the deeper emotional aspect of this imagination that has been terraformed by human beings. So we've got these types of archetypes, emotional archetypes. And if you keep spinning around, it's surrounded in a layer of true astral that hasn't been conditioned by lower consciousness, by ego, because the ego is what conditions the lower astral plane. But you have to have a certain refined quality of ego to even be able to consciously work with this level of existence. And so it goes on to what we call the mental plane, and eventually the causal plane, and so on and so forth. So it's not really a map. Ron Fiasco says Kabbalistic snowflake. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. That's how I see it. And then when you talk about the clip-off, you know, it's also happening simultaneously. When these areas become imbalanced in some way, when something overflows, that's where you get this shell. It's happening, like I said on the live stream before, you can really see if this thing was spinning around, it would make a circle. Duh. You can see the clip-off as the shell of that circle, the eggshell, the surrounding. It's around it, it's behind it, it's through it. It's all part of it. For most people, it isn't useful or appropriate to work with the clip-off. That's why books like this don't talk about it much, because for most people, the clip-off is not useful or appropriate. Luxury Newman says, I know this is unrelated, but should I still do my sigil work during this solar eclipse? I wanted to send my sigils up because it's the new moon. Well, you do it, man. You do what you want. You do what you want. Because for me to tell you what to do is just like you allowing the moon to tell you what to do. You know, you got the 4 phases of the moon, new moon, this, that, and the third. You got the lunar eclipse. Imagine if you didn't hear about this eclipse. I almost didn't, you know, because I don't really check my phone as much as I used to lately. Imagine if you didn't even know there was an eclipse. Would you still allow that to stop you? Well, you wouldn't, because you didn't know. There's cycles and there's systems that we're all up under. We're under a cycle and system of time. But what part of you is under that system of time? That's the ego self. That's the outer self, what we were talking about on the previous page. I don't know if you were here for that. But the 5 senses collect data and create a self out of that data. That's not the true self. But that self created out of the collected data, it is under the rulership of the planets, the sun, the moon, astrology. That outer self is under the rulership of all these different aspects of pressure. The inner self is beyond the sun, the moon, the stars, the constellation. The inner self is not a Virgo. The inner self is not a Gemini, right? The constellations came about as an expression of the inner self. So you can do it according to the moon. There's nothing wrong with none of that stuff. I'm not saying, I've never said something's bad or good. That's not how my brain operates, and that's how I'm not gonna teach you that way. You can allow me to tell you what to do, but that's the same thing as allowing these external forces to tell you what to do. Check out my last live stream if you really want to understand this. And I get it. You might just want a straight answer so you can go do your ritual. And if you just want a straight answer, I say do it anyway. I say allow the lunar eclipse to enhance your ritual. Right? If that's you, cool. Go on and do it. If you want more than that, I'd say check out my last live stream, because I talk about energy. And most of us, we observe the external occurrences in our life and we adjust our energy to it. In other words, if we're having a bad day on the outside, it makes us have a bad day on the inside. If somebody screams at us, now we're mad, we want to scream. If somebody makes us feel good and says good things to us, now we feel good. You're allowing the external world to dictate how your energy flows. Now there's another way. You can operate from within. You can choose. You can choose. You can choose for right now to be a lunar eclipse. I mean, hell, you would know the difference. You really wouldn't know the difference. See, it's funny because people are like, oh, I missed the full moon. How did you miss the full moon? A full moon experience doesn't mean that you have to go outside and look at it. No. Flowing straight from the survival scrolls. Look like the yellow pages. Peace, Anna Molly. My favorite ginger. Darkness Divine says, why isn't it useful? Well, like I said before, I didn't say the clip off is not useful. I said to most people it will not be useful, because the clip off deals with an overflow sometimes, or an underflow. It deals with being off natural balance. So you have to go into a different way of doing things working with the clip off. Whereas the forces that we see inside of this shell, this tree of life, this is how your consciousness, your body, your soul, all these aspects of the self and the mind, the tree of life describes the natural patterns that govern it. The clip off represents patterns that may have been expired or may not have happened yet. For example, a woman hundreds of thousands of years ago, her primary thing about life was to make sure that the house was taken care of, the babies, that she got foraged for some berries and fruits or something like that. I don't know. Today, that mindset, that mental pattern, that emotional pattern may not be relevant because we live in a different world. So you'd have to go into the clip off to access the hunter-gatherer woman spirit. Now, if you have a use for that, if you know what you're doing, then yeah, it's useful. But for most people don't need to go into the past or the future to help the present. Most people don't need that. And I mean deep past or deep future. Most people don't need to do that. ZJ says, whoa, the Kabbalah does look like a dreidel. Excellent observation. Gabriel's SS God, peace. Ron Fiasco says, the clip-off realm and those beings are a lot to unpack. Yes. Anthony Hardy, peace. What says, I allowed Tucker Carlson to tell me what to do, and Tucker Carlson said I should follow my intuition. There you go. Use what you got. I know you're being sarcastic. Coupe de Ville in peace. All right, let's get back to this, shall we? Let's get back to this. Darkness Divine says, wow, thank you. I thought I had to go through the clip-off if I work with goetic spirits. Well, believe it or not, the two are not directly connected. They're not directly connected. All right, let's keep going. In fact, you'll find plenty of correspondences to the Tree of Life and the Goetia. That's on more of like an advanced level. The astrological and Kabbalistic connections of the Goetia are more on an advanced level because upon first observation, it doesn't look like it makes much sense. Like, why would this spirit be associated with this sphere or this day of the week? If you want to just work with the Goetia, you can do that without having to go through anything else. A Goetic initiation is largely self-initiation. You don't need to go through some other hoops to do that. Okay. All right, let's go. Jennifer Lopez, Peace. I love your music videos. Waiting for tonight. Oh, when you will be here in my arms. Waiting for tonight. Notice I said music videos and not music. All right, so actual things perceived by our inner senses. Darkness Divine says, good voice. Thank you very much. I just had a whole day of band practice and my throat feels like it's been through the clip off. This is quite all right, so long as we clearly understand that such images are being used in a representative capacity and are not the actual things perceived by the inner senses. Okay, so remember we were talking about the astral plane, right? And how the astral plane is not a place, and it's nothing built out of the five senses, like weight, size, hardness, color, none of that. That's not the astral plane. That's the physical plane. The astral plane is a plane that is built upon the concepts of pure relationship, all right? Pure relationship. And as I said, this is why you can affect things at a distance or throughout time, because it's all about relationship. So if you see an image in your astral projection or your dreams, if you encounter something in your astral experience, it's not the thing you're seeing. The language of the astral plane is all about symbolic relationship. So if you see a dragon, if you have astral sex, that doesn't mean it's what you're actually doing. It's a representative, it's a symbol of the forces that you're working with. It's the relationships. All right, so of course, a great deal in the astral light that concerns the more or less immediate after-death conditions of humanity is capable of being fairly accurately expressed through such physical plane images, since the action of human minds, incarnate and disincarnate, that means alive and dead, upon the plastic astral substance has resulted in the building up of forms very similar to those of the physical plane. That would explain why when you do the astral projection or you have an astral experience, you may enter familiar territory. You might see trees and a couch and a street, and it might appear to be a place, but understand that's a symbolic representation given to you by the subconscious mind. All right, so like you said, he mentioned that the astral plane was plastic. That means malleable, easily moldable. All right, so a great deal in the astral light that concerns the more or less immediate after-death conditions of humanity. So he's talking about after you die. You know, a lot of people are wanting to go to heaven, right, or wanting to have some pleasant experience after they die. Well, these states of existence are real, and they have been created by humanity. We created heaven. We created hell. There are some people that are so terrified of hell and scared of going to hell, and they feel condemned, that when they die, that's where they send themselves. Yes. Like I said, it gets kind of scary when you realize you're in the driver's seat. Right? Hey, yo! Hey, yo! Useless familiar, thank you. Useless Familiar says that recent live stream was fire. I really got to find a way to cut out some clips, man. I need to get somebody that's able to do that for me, to just cut out some of the clips and the high points of these, because man, I guess I will eventually, later on this year perhaps, find somebody that can do that for me full time. So now we're talking about afterlife. We're talking about death. The more or less immediate after-death conditions of humanity is capable of being fairly accurately expressed through such physical plane images, since the action of human minds, right? We're talking about the action of human minds, both living and dead, incarnate and disincarnate, upon the plastic astral substance has resulted in the building up of forms very similar to those of the physical plane. This is done more or less automatically by both incarnate and disincarnate minds, but it may also be done consciously and deliberately. And this is what has been done by generations of occult students working on the glyph of the Tree of Life. So I'll tell you one thing, right? With that said right there, a lot of people are afraid of black magicians and wizards and witches and warlocks and all that stuff. Well, the thing is, most of these people that claim that title don't have the level of discipline and concentration to actually do anything to you. There's a grand mass of people who like to use these words of being a black magician or an occultist or whatever, but they're really not, right? So you, more than likely, you're not going to be attacked by somebody who does this stuff for real. It takes a great deal of effort to create and construct astral reality. Like you said, it does happen automatically, but most people don't have the level of free will to create anything substantial, right? Here's what I mean by that. If I were to ask you to go into the astral plane and create a reality, more than likely you're going to create something that you've already seen before. More than likely you're going to create something that you've already seen before, whether it's something from an anime or a movie that you're going to recreate, an Iron Man suit and Tony Stark Industries. You're going to create something that already exists. So in other words, you didn't create it. Right? So when you talk about these people who are doing magic against you, really, that involves someone going into this place and creating something and attaching you to it. And like I said, most of these people, especially nowadays, the more we go into the future with the TikTok generation and the 15-second attention span, chances are you're not going to piss off somebody who does this. In fact, the most common type of curses and hexes are done by yourself, right? An individual can tell you that they hexed you and cursed you, and that's only about 20% of the hex, right? What they did was NLP. They convinced you, and you do the rest of the work because you're so scared and you don't know any better. You perpetuate the rest of that on top of yourself. Now, I'm not saying someone can't actually create something and send it your way. Of course they can, but I'm saying for the most part, you floating around on social media, maybe getting in some arguments in the comments section, you're not going to piss somebody off to the point that they actually do something serious. The best they're going to do is tell you they did. Now, if you really had an issue, you know. I'm sure I've had something thrown my way once or twice. I eat it, and it makes me sick for a bit, and then I get really strong. Aldin says, think of what was built on the astral plane by human consciousness just from the superstitious Middle Ages. Right. All right, let's keep going. Mega Man. Right, that's why he's my favorite character, one of my favorite characters. Along with Master Chief, who literally cannot fail. Master Chief can't fail so much that they're making a 6th Halo game. Can you believe that? I love me some Halo, man. Ron Fiasco says, in some plane, Goku exists. Right. And consider this, Goku and Mega Man and Master Chief, these are all symbolic representations of a force that exists. Right. So when I have these figures on my altar, I'm not worshiping Mega Man or Venom or the xenomorph from Aliens. I am paying homage and respect to the force that these things represent and its existence within me. So when I have these things on my altar, I'm literally worshiping my soul. I'm paying respect to myself because these images represent something that I see in me. That's why I love it so much. Right? That's why I love it. You everything that you're passionate about it because it's you, because it's in you already. Right? That's why we love certain people. That's why we have heroes, because they show us a part of ourselves. And sometimes we may not feel like we display that quality or we can activate that quality or whatever, right? But you love your Black Panther, you love your Thanos, you love your Spider-Man, you love your whoever because they represent something that you instinctively know is within you. All right, let me get back to this because we might just make it through this chapter only. This is a good session, man. This was a great day. I tell you, man, I unlocked some core memories today. Because, like I said, my band, we haven't played together in 20 years, man. That's a long ass time. And we got together, and I'm all worried that I won't be able to do it again. Everybody's kind of having the same kind of fears, well, what if something happened to the 20 years where we lost it? Nah, man, that muscle memory kicked back in, that subconscious mind kicked back in. It was a beautiful time. And then we got to talking about stuff. Because, look, like I said, 20 years is a long time. We started talking about the old stories of stuff that happened when we first started. And all these memories started to come back and become unlocked. And I haven't had anything like that happen in a while. So that was great. And that goes to show you also, here's one thing I love about the mind. Memory is not stored locally in the brain organ. Memory is state dependent. Okay, memory is state dependent. And what that means is whatever state you're in, you record those experiences in that state. When you shift states and do something else, it's difficult to remember it. For example, if you're angry and you're pissed off at, say, your partner, right, because they do certain things that make you upset, when you're very happy, you don't think about those things. But it might be weeks or months later that you're pissed off again, and all of a sudden, all that stuff comes back. Now you remember everything they did to piss you off, right? Ladies, y'all know what I'm talking about. Likewise, when you have certain states that occur from being around groups of people or doing a certain thing, right? Memory stored in those states, and even if you don't access them for a very long time, if you tap back into that, all that information is still there. It's like riding a bike. You don't forget how to ride a bike. I haven't ridden a bike in years, but I promise you, if I sat my ass on one, we're going up and down the street, up the highway, just like that. All right. Memory is state dependent. Don't forget it. Well, here's what I'm saying. If you want to remember something, if you want to tap into something, try to remember the state you were in when you were doing it, right? All right. The Digital Alchemist says Cortana is the left side. She absolutely is. And I wonder what she represents. Oh, okay, he says Master Chief is the right side, Cortana is the left side. And Amali says music is high-key emotional energy. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, come on, let's keep going. Let's keep going. My bad, guys. I know you want to get through this, but these lines keep reminding me of other things to flesh this information out. So forgive me if you really want to just plow through the text. I think it's helpful to kind of add some extra stuff. Maybe not too much, but you know. Okay, yeah, we're talking about the afterlife. We're talking about, um, here we go. Yeah, so the building up of forms, very similar to those on the physical plane. So he says that it's automatically done. We go to this astral plane and we start building what we know. We start building what we're familiar with, right? So he says this is done more or less automatically by both incarnate and disincarnate minds, but it may also be done consciously and deliberately. Okay, so yeah, we started talking about hexes and curses and stuff. And this is what has been done by generations of occult students working on the glyph of the Tree of Life. The various forces of the astral light have been assigned to their own particular symbolic images, and when a certain astral force is perceived by the clairvoyant who has been trained along these lines, it is seen as a being of a certain type. Now, many of these representative images are arbitrary and do not afford any true picture of reality. You hear that? Many of these representative images are arbitrary and do not afford any true picture of reality. I just want to say, back when I was like brand new trying to get serious about the occult years ago, like if I could time travel physically, because you can time travel mentally and emotionally. Like I just said, memory state dependent. But if I could time travel physically, I'd give this book to myself, because this book right here has everything you need to know. There's a lot of books that are good for starters, but everything in here is so pure and pristine and clean. Like, there's no bias. He's not trying to get you to buy something. He's straight up, right? This is one of Dion Fortune's students, and this guy here knows his stuff. He knows his stuff. But if I was a beginner, man, Tremere vocal harmony, peace. Circle of Mystics says, I remember that song too. What song? You might be back in the past. So in other words, yeah, if you're a beginner or if you feel like you're somebody just getting into this stuff, this is an excellent book to learn. I'm telling you. Now, many of these representative images are arbitrary and do not afford any true picture of the reality. Sirius Su 888, peace. Such, for instance, are the Deva forms seen by Hindu psychics, and the angel forms seen by many Western psychics. Such, too, are the traditional gnomes, sylphs, salamanders, and undines of medieval magic. There isn't too much good information out there on elementals that I've found, but hey, this is a good book. This is a good book, Practical Elemental Magic. It's all about the elemental spirits. If you're somebody who's interested in working elemental magic, right? Check this book out, Practical Elemental Magic. It's a good one. But even as Mr. Butler here has just said, just like seeing these angels or these devas, such too are the traditional gnomes, sylphs, salamanders, and undines of evil magic. In the same class are all the spirits, personified by the ancient Greeks as Oreads, nymphs, dryads. And when the astral beings concerned are perceived by a psychic who sees in the Greek mode, listen to that. When the astral beings concerned are perceived by a psychic who sees in the Greek mode because of some temperamental bias there too, then those beings will be seen in that mode. Did you hear that? It all depends on the code, on the mode. So you can go up in there thinking about some Kemet and Egyptian deities. You can go in there thinking about the Greek deities. You can go in there thinking about the Goetia, right? You can go in there with any type of pantheon preset. You're going to get the same entities, but it's going to be of the particular flavor that you chose to season it with. Eating the same food. The same applies to those in whom the medieval mode is strong, right? They will see the astral beings and forces under the appearance of gnomes, salamanders, etc. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Stuffed Dog 69, peace, bro. Been a while. Good to see you. Ron Fiasco says, I honestly love this book so far. Definitely wished I had this when I first started. Or hell, even a group of peeps like this. I was on my damn own. Yeah, man. Me too. And sometimes for certain people, it's better to learn on your own. It's better that way for certain people. For others, it's better to learn in a group. Aldin says, this book is such gold, it should be on every Barnes & Noble. But of course, that's why it's not. Exactly. Okay. It must be borne in mind, too, that the tendency of all elemental life, descending, as it is, into more material forms of substance, is to take any available form presented to it. Didn't we talk about elementals a couple months ago, y'all? We talked about elementals. It was a book by Manly P. Hall, and he explicitly talked about how most of these deities that people believe that they're seeing are actually elemental spirits that are wearing a costume. And that goes for ancestors too. A lot of people who believe that they're talking to ancestors are actually communicating with elemental spirits who've taken on those shells that you provided it with. Now, I'm not saying ancestors don't exist. I'm not saying that these deities and gods don't exist. What I'm saying is that most people who don't have training or refinement or any type of understanding, they're going to come into contact with elemental spirits because those are the easiest spirits to come into contact with. In fact, we're all in contact with elemental spirits all the time. We just don't call it that. And we give them shape and form, and they continue to play the role that we give them. Again, this is all about reflection. On the highest level, over here at Kether, the highest state of consciousness, I should say, we're literally looking at God itself, however you perceive or conceive of that, looking into the mirror of its own creation. God himself looking at himself in the mirror, having a reaction to that, and the reaction changes the reflection. We got this upper triad now. That's what's happening. Bing, bam, boom, over and over and over and over again, infinitely. And what's collected is every potential reflection that can possibly happen. Now, God in a mirror can make a whole bunch of different facial expressions and poses and react to them, right? You're talking about an infinite amount. Some of it isn't useful or appropriate, so it goes in here. But the ones that are useful and appropriate goes here, right? This is a collection of all the reflections of God. But see, that process don't stop. We got these triangles happening all across the board, and these all represent different aspects of that reflective process. And at the lowest level, this physical life, we're still seeing it happen. Your thoughts become things, but they don't become things right away. What you think and what you feel and what you say and what you repeat over and over and over again, that creates a spiritual signature. That creates an energetic signature. And these forces that be, or should I say, the rest of this world that is a reflection of you, plays out your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. And we call those things elementals. The elementals give shape to your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. So everything that you think and you do reflects out into the world and shows itself to you. The same way that God's looking in the mirror at himself, and every different possible thing that he sees and reacts to is accumulated here. And that's what gives us the matrix, right? The potential. Nothing new under the sun. Same thing's happening down here. Instead of a mirror, you're looking at your environment. And what changes your environment? We can call them elemental spirits under your command, mind you. You don't need a degree or a rank to command elemental spirits because you're already doing it. You've been doing it since you were a child. You will be doing it after you die as well. Because you're giving birth. These things are alive. And perhaps one day they will become other forms of life. Not perhaps, definitely. Does that come through? Is that clear? Stuff Dog says, good to make it, fam. I've read this book twice. Butler is very advanced to be able to make this information so clear and plain. I agree with you, man. I agree with you. Darkness Divine says, should I be venerating ancestors, etc.? If you find it useful and appropriate, yes. Here's one thing I learned. I recently brought my ancestor altar. I moved it, right? Because it wasn't getting much attention. It was down in the garage collecting dust. And while doing my work in the dark side of the clip off, I realized that I need to go back into those spaces that I've forgotten about and bring some of the things out that put me in a useful, positive state. Remember we were talking about the clip off earlier? And one of the things I said was that most people don't have a use for it. Well, in this particular case, I went into my discarded past. I went into the place that I buried. Hell, even my band practice today would be an example of me going into my personal clip off because I didn't want to do it at first. I typically don't like to go back into the past and pull things out. I usually don't like to do that. So personally for me, this is an experience that it wasn't simply me going into the past and bringing something up. That past contained a lot of emotion, a lot of stored up, contained emotion. So me going back into the past and unlocking that, unleash that emotion into my present life. So when I say the clip off deals with the overflow, the excess, the things that are thrown into the wayside, the garbage can of the past, I'm not simply saying it's trash. What I'm saying is that as you go along your life and you live, a lot of people have a garage or an attic that they store stuff in. Well, it's not just stuff in there. When you go and you dig through that stuff, you're unleashing energy, you're unleashing emotions and memories and all types of things like that. So when I went to go bring my ancestor altar upstairs out of the darkness of the garage, it unleashed certain emotions, it unleashed certain thoughts and feelings, right? So for me, I've got some pictures of the oldest family members that I'm aware of, right? People that I wasn't even alive when they were here. When I say oldest, I mean like if you have a family tree, as far back as I can trace, I have a male and a female, and I put them on my altar. I don't even know their names. So for me, symbolically, it speaks to my subconscious mind as what? Somebody tell me. As the archetypal father and the archetypal mother, right? They may not actually be those things. That might have just been a cousin of a cousin or whatever. I don't know. But to my subconscious mind, that represents the archetypal divine masculine, archetypal divine feminine, because I am a descendant of them. And guess what else I have on my altar? A picture of me, looking all cool, with using a silver metallic magic marker to draw a Merkaba around my body, right? And I placed that in the highest point. See, I used to have this Barbie doll with a Grim Reaper cloak, right? All cloaked up to represent Bina. And I had that at the very top. And once I graduated from my initiation of that particular sphere, I had to take that down because the meaning changed. The meaning changed. And it was beginning to give me a different definition that was affecting me in a way that was not useful or appropriate. So guess what? Well, at one point, while that symbol that I had up there was exactly what I needed, it has now entered the clip off. And I literally put it under the sink to represent me pushing it into the subconscious mind. I hope that this gives you some clarity on using an ancestor altar. It's the same as everything else. You use these pictures as symbolic references to the forces in your subconscious mind. That's how you do it. If that's something that you want to do and work with, yes, do it. Yes, do it. But like I said, me telling you what to do is the same thing as the moon telling you to do a ritual, right? Or you can't do it because it's a lunar eclipse, or you have to do it because it's a full moon. Me telling you what to do is like the moon telling you what to do. So ultimately, you choose from within. Is it useful to you? Is it appropriate to you? I would say do it, yeah. But don't do it because I said do it. Do it because you have an inner reason to why it needs to be done. Because when you venerate ancestors, you're looking at a part of yourself that is in the distant past. When you venerate ancestors, you're looking at an aspect of yourself in the subconscious mind. Because you have a body with DNA, and you've got blood that's flowing, and organs that are moving, and your hair grows a certain way, your face looks a certain way, your body's constructed based off the data that these ancestors provided. So take that and run with it. Take that and run with it. Your likes and your dislikes, your habits, your hobbies, your desires, some of those things are inherited. They're inherited by your parents, by your grandparents, great grandparents. You don't know. You don't know. Some of these people passed away, and some of their habits and thought forms went into the next appropriate vessel, which very well may have been you. A lot of the stuff that you do and you don't really seem to have a reason or know why might have come from some of these ancestors, right? So there's multiple reasons why you'd want to do that. Oh yeah. Wipe me down. Cause I'm on. Cause I'm on. Shoulders, chest, pants, shoes. Shoulders, chest, pants, shoes. Wipe me down. Serious Suit AAA says, would it be more powerful if the ancestors' belief line up with yours? It's possible. Just like what he was saying here about the Greek mode, right? Look at what he said here about the different angels or devas or elementals. He said that in some cases are in the same class are all the spirits personified by the ancient Greeks as Oreads, nymphs, dryads, etc. And when the astral beings concerned are perceived by a psychic who sees in the Greek mode, because of some temperamental bias there too, then those beings will be seen in that mode. The same applies to those in whom the medieval mode is strong. They will see the astral beings and forces under the appearance of gnomes, salamanders, etc. So, to answer your question as far as the strength of the ancestors and believing in the same thing, it can be, basically, if you want to do that. Yes. You may find it easier to do that because subconsciously you believe that, hey, my ancestors came up this way, so it's in me, it's natural, right? You might have a subconscious belief in that. Go for it. Or you may be the rebellious type and say, you know what? I'm not doing anything my ancestors did. I know better than them. What they did was for them, and that's great, right? But I'm doing something different. You can work with that too, right? You can work with that too. As far as I know, my family and ancestors were, strong Christians. The respect that I pay is, I put my Bible right along with all my other occult books to show I respect that. I respect it. Now, I'm not going to church, you know what I'm saying? I'm not doing anything that they did, but I respect what they did. Because really, you can find this information regardless of what label you choose to call yourself. Okay, let's go. Okay, so we talked about these elementals. It must be borne in mind, too, that the tendency of all elemental life, descending as it is into more material forms of substance, is to take any available form presented to it, and such forms are to be found by the million. Such forms are to be found by the million in the rolling billows of energy which we know of as the astral light. In this book, unless it is otherwise stated, the term astral light refers to those levels of the basic astral ether which have been modified by the action of the minds of all living creatures upon this planet, including the mind consciousness of the planet itself, and which present to the observer certain definite forms. Forms as such are not native to that realm of living energy substance, which we have termed the astral ether. And the forms to be found in it are the results of the creative activities of minds working downwards from the higher mental levels or upwards from the material levels. So the astral light divides naturally into the upper astral, with its background of mind and spirit, and the lower astral, with its background of physical matter. All right? All right. So as he talks about the astral light, he's talking about the lower astral. which is the aspect of the astral plane which has been shaped by human consciousness and planetary consciousness. And that includes animal consciousness and bug consciousness and rock, mineral, plant consciousness. This is how you can tap in and communicate with nature, or don't we call them elemental spirits? But apart from the forms, the true astral world continues to manifest under its own laws, and the genius of the adepts of the Kabbalah has been to devise forms which may be used as indicating symbols of the particular forces concerned. So a mighty and complex system of living imagery has been built up around the central glyph of the Tree of Life, and generations of students, through hundreds of years, have used and meditated upon this root system of metaphysical symbolism. This is built up in the astral light, what may be termed the egregore of the tree, the composite living soul of which the glyph of the tree is the physical body. Of course, the egregore of the tree is also built in realms far above the astral light, but the same law holds good. The higher realms we may term the divine astral. All right, so give me just a quick second. I'm going to grab another cup of coffee, because I think now my voice is telling me it's time to take a break. I'll be right back. Cause I'm on. Cause I'm on. Today has been a great day. It really has. And I'm really excited about the near future. And this feels good because I know I've mentioned a few times just coming out of a low point, you know. And I believe that reality happens in waves, in cycles, in ups and downs. So I don't think that being involved with the occult means that you're going to be exempt from emotional anything. But what I do believe is that with occult understanding and training helps you to navigate any water, any ocean with an even keel. But I feel like a certain kind of balance is always operating in my life. I don't feel like I'm ever really off the path. I think that no matter what happens, even if it doesn't feel good, it's still part of the curriculum, still part of the lesson plan, still part of the journey. And I think that the low point that I recently came out of definitely helps me to appreciate this season that I'm entering into now. And I can feel it. You know what I'm saying? I've been alive for a while. I can usually read patterns and I can tell when things are about to get really good or when things are about to kind of be blah. I can usually tell. I think that comes from working with spirits. Personally, I know that when I'm evoking a spirit or working with a spirit, I start to feel it approaching, and then I feel it climax, and then I feel it kind of leave. And to be quite honest, from my experience of working with hundreds of spirits, I can say hundreds because the Goetia plus, okay, well, maybe 100, maybe 100 or so. What I can say is that when you work with these spirits, it's usually them working with you. It's usually the force that these spirits represent appearing in your life, flowing in your life, and then your conscious mind becomes aware of it and you say, oh, I wonder what it's like if I would work with this spirit. But in truth, the spirit's been working with you. Your conscious mind just now got hip to it. I think that that's a better explanation. And often what we do, especially as beginners, is we psych ourselves out or we scare ourselves like, oh, well, I want to work with this spirit, but I don't know if I'm going to do it right, or I'm afraid, or what if I do it wrong, or how do I know it's a counterfeit spirit? But understand, this spirit, I hate to say this word, but it chose you already. Technically, it didn't choose anything because it's a part of your soul. Like, imagine for a moment that your soul is like this multifaceted thing. I know I got to solve this thing. It was more difficult than I thought it would be, but I like a challenge. Imagine that your soul is this multifaceted thing. While you might be this part of the soul, this part over here that you can't see, this could be your subconscious mind. This could be an aspect of your subconscious mind. And it might appear to you as a spirit. And notice how the colors are all jumbled up. The center is what it actually is, but it's got a piece of this, a piece of that, a piece of this, piece of this, piece of this. So when it comes to you, it seems like it's this separate entity, this spirit. But when you know how to look and you zoom out, you realize that it's only an aspect of yourself. Well, Trev, why do we have to work with demons if we're all powerful? Why do we have to work with spirits? Well, here's the thing. You, in your great ego-ness, can't turn around and work with the backside of your soul directly. You have to do it indirectly. That's why. Not because you're trying to make a pact and go to hell or whatever. You're working with yourself. But since it's extremely difficult to do in your current state, you use different symbols to reach around and touch a part of yourself that you really don't have direct access to. But understand, it's all you. It's all you. Now, that's a 12-faced cube I got to represent me working with the Titans. That was part of my cliphotic work, working with the Titans. Bobby Hemming used to talk about the Titans a lot, so I started to do some research. Started to do a little bit of research on the Titans. A little bit of work on the Titans. And what I found was that this information is largely incomplete, and I really had to fill in the blanks, fill in the gaps. I had to do my own thing. But more on that later. I'm taking my time getting to that part of the discussion. Okay, coffee's done. Circle of Mystics says, LOL, what's so funny? Did you see the image that I showed? Maybe you didn't see the image, but the image is why I was laughing. I'm really not supposed to be talking about it. I'm really not supposed to be talking about it right now. Straight Panther says, where did you get that book? I'm sorry if my teammates saw that. I wasn't supposed to show that to y'all yet. I'll delete it. Don't worry. I'll delete it from the video. Oh well, I just spilled the beans. Or not. Okay. So let's get back to it, shall we? Coffee's finished. Throat feels better. What a beautiful day. Oh man. They're gonna be very upset with me. I can't help it, man. I can't help it. My ego is ruled by the Gemini forces. I have to communicate. I have to share. I have to spill the beans. What says, or clever marketing? Only time will tell, right? So I'm just going to keep it real, guys. We're going to go through this chapter. I was feeling extremely ambitious when we started, but that ambition turned into more background conversation, which is cool. But I think we're only going to do this chapter tonight. And like I said, next Saturday, I actually have my performance, so I probably won't be doing this read. But I think we're actually performing in the daytime, so it's a chance that we will do it. I'll let you guys know. I don't think my voice will be out, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, let's continue. Let's continue. So, egregores, that's what we're talking about. I'll just start from the top. But apart from the forms, the true astral world continues to manifest under its own laws, and the genius of the adepts of the Kabbalah has been to devise forms which may be used in indicating symbols of the particular forces concerned. So a mighty and complex system of living imagery has been built up around the central glyph of the Tree of Life, and generations of students through hundreds of years have used and meditated upon this root system of metaphysical symbolism. This has built up in the astral light what may be termed the egregore of the tree, the composite living soul of which the glyph of the tree is the physical body. Take what he just said there and think about being initiated into a particular current or being initiated into a particular practice, right? What's actually happening is when you join a specific current or a group or whatever, like say for example, you join this Kabbalah stuff and you get initiated. And look, I'm not saying like it's a club, it's a Kabbalah club out there that you have to join. And I don't mean initiated as in you have to go out there and someone has to cut your arm or spill some chicken blood on you. there's self-initiation paths to the Kabbalah, right? And as far as right now and the time and place that I'm in, I really had no choice but to be self-initiated, and that comes with certain trials on each of the paths and on each of the sephirah. And when you begin that journey, what happens is that there, like what he's saying here, the lower astral plane has been deliberately constructed and formed based on the students of this very science for hundreds of years, maybe more, because the tradition is built upon something else. So no matter what thing that you're getting into, there have been people before you that have already constructed the path for you to walk on, right? And that's not even with magic. Like, say, me working with NLP. This is a science that people have carved out in the mental plane and the astral plane. Even if you get into sports, like say you join some sport and you're on, or even a specific team, better yet, a specific position on that team, right? There have been others before you who have done that, and they've learned different ways to do it better. So you study that's why you study people who do what you do, so you can get better at it, because they've already carved a path, not just in the physical plane, but in the astral plane too. Somebody who was a great quarterback, they put their heart and soul in it, right? It wasn't just simply them out there playing on the field. They put everything into it. So when you study them, you're not just getting their physical motions, you're also getting their heart. You're getting the energy that they put into this thing. So that's what it means when we talk about joining a group. Peace, Framestar Films. Hell, even if you get into making movies, doing film, right? There's an art, there's a craft, and there's people who have invested their energy and their time into this thing, right? Even if you do modeling, no matter what it is that you do, there is a and I'm trying to find the word for it. There's like a group, a spiritual aspect to it. You belong to this thing once you get into it. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I call it a current. It can help you if you tap into it. When you tap into it the right way, it can carry you. It can give you a boost. It can give you support. So you're not just doing it yourself. Remember I talked about self-initiation of the Kabbalah. I'm not just saying that to sound cool. I'm saying that to say that I have tapped into the Kabbalistic current, and it teaches me. It guides me. It leads me. The same way that you tap into the spirit of anything, it will lead you based on its soul. You get me? Visual OD says like an oversoul, group soul. Yes. But imagine that it's a group soul or oversoul of a particular thing, a particular practice, a particular way of behaving, right? And this is a part of what constitutes the lower astral plane. Matthew Watson says the stealing a skill practice in the gold book comes to mind. Oh yeah. Stuffed Dog says the Ruach of the Hebrews. Yes. Even with music, right? There's a lot of people who appreciate certain genres of music. My younger brother is a huge fan of like old school hip hop, like when the time when there were like lyricists and people actually put a lot into the art of being a lyricist, not the gimmicks, not the modern stuff, like 90s 2000s kind of thing. He's a big fan of that. And just listening to him talk about it, you can tell there's a spirit to that 90s hip hop. There's a spirit to the lyrical hip hop. And you might have an artist every now and then pop up in modern times that carries on the tradition You see what I'm saying? That goes for all different types of anything. All right, so I think we fleshed that out. Let's keep going. Those who work with the tree come into sympathetic relationship with this egregore and may gain from it, by a species of telepathic action, light on their present day problems, and knowledge of the inner realities which transcends that which they could reach without such assistance. Let me read that over. Those who work with the tree come into sympathetic relationship with this egregore and may gain from it, by a species of telepathic action, light on their present day problems, and knowledge of the inner realities which transcends that which they could reach without such assistance. All magical operations, when carried out by those who have been trained in the schools of the Kabbalah, are based on and utilize the store of images in the egregore of the tree. All astral forces which may be used in such magic have their own symbolic personifications in that group of associated images, and by consciously manipulating these representative images, the forces of which they are an expression are likewise manipulated. Hear that? That's extremely important. Let's go back. All magical operations, when carried out by those who have been trained in the schools of the Kabbalah, are based on and utilize what? What do they utilize? What are these magical operations who are carried out by these people trained in the Kabbalah? What are they based on? They're based on the store of images in the egregore of the tree. See, creating an egregore is more about trying to influence somebody to do something. The egregore contains the data, the information. The egregore contains everything you need to further your evolution. All astral forces which may be used in such magic have their own symbolic personifications in that group of associated images. Young lady mentioned the unicorn before. Why? Just because it's a cute pen? Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe there's something more to it. All astral forces, which may be used in such magic, have their own symbolic personifications in that group of associated images. And by consciously manipulating these representative images, the forces of which they are an expression of are likewise manipulated. So how do you manipulate the forces of the universe? How do you manipulate the cosmic forces, the elemental forces? How do you do that? By manipulating the symbol that represents them. Now, you may not change the entire energy signature of the egregore, but you will manipulate its effect upon yourself, right? You're not going to alter the meaning of the unicorn, but you'll alter the meaning of it for yourself, right? When you tap into any egregore, you're dealing with the symbols that are associated with it. These are all keys and buttons on a keyboard, and every key produces a different result. That's why we call them keys. They open doors. And when you put the key in and turn it, you open the door, you open the lock. And what's behind that door, you now have access to. Thank you, Dara Holland. Dara Holland said, check before I even asked. Circle of Mystics says the Gold Book are the initials of that author, RB. Absolutely. Absolutely. Ooh. Since the level of the mind which deals with such images is the so-called subconscious mind, it is an axiom in magic that it is the subconscious mind which is the magical agent, the high priestess of the tarot, whilst the conscious mind is the directing and controlling factor, the magician of the tarot. So check that out. He just told you right there. If you don't know anything about tarot, you know what these two cards mean. The high priestess, that's the subconscious mind. But not just the subconscious mind which is the magical agent, that aspect of the subconscious mind that gives you what you call magic. That's the high priestess. And he said that the conscious mind is the directing and controlling factor. So the aspect of the mind that approaches the subconscious, the aspect of the mind that approaches the subconscious in order to do this magic, that's the magician of the tarot. right? Thus, all magical operations by the personal consciousness are indirect. Let me say that again. All magical operations by the personal consciousness are indirect. Remember when I showed you that 12-sided cube, right? You indirectly reach the other faces. All magical operations by the personal consciousness are indirect. The actual operation is performed by the subconscious level of the mind, working through the appropriate images. This is one of the most important laws of magic. Aldin says you could say the fool is the subconscious as well. To specify, I would say that the fool would represent the unconscious. Because see, I give it 3 layers. The conscious mind at the very top, the subconscious, and then the unconscious. And I would say the difference between the two is that the subconscious is very personal. It's yours, relatively speaking, right? It is shared by, we can say, your group of people that you interact with, right? So your generation, perhaps, or your family, or your bloodline. The subconscious is shared by the people that are in your life, but the unconscious would be even deeper, right? And now we're getting into the planet and the animals and perhaps even the things that were here before, and the clip-off. I would say the fool represents the unconscious, high priestess the subconscious, and the magus the conscious mind. What do you think about that, Mr. Alden? Circle of Mystics says, I would agree. The fool is more of a clean slate, waiting to be programmed by the subconscious. Yeah, and that's the key thing. The fool card, or the path between Kether and Hakma, is very pure, very untainted, not as conditioned as the others. Right, and see, this is one good way to understand these paths on the tree. The fool card represents the path between Kether and Hakma. Remember, I said God looking at the mirror. That first glance, when God first initially says, I am that I am, that's the fool card. That's the path between Kether and Hakma. Whereas the path between Kether and Bina, you got this magician. It's aware of the different potentialities of that reflection. Bina, we're talking about the collection of every possible reflection that could have been reflected. So the connection between that storehouse of reflections and God itself would be the magician. Now you're selecting and choosing which manifested reflection you'd want to work with. But then you have the path that goes from Kether all the way down into manifestation, across the abyss, straight to Tifereth. This is the high priestess. This is the subconscious mind. And what that represents is that you've got the manifest world and its connection to God. And that connection is so complex, so intricate, that you have to cross a barrier, a gulf, a void. That means you may not make your way out of it. So we're talking about a wide warehouse of memory. Yeah, we can talk about the Tree of Life for a long time, that's for sure. You said makes sense, wonder where the Empress fits in. Well, the Empress card is the connection between Bina and Hakma. So just take the metaphors here. The mirror that God is looking in, the mirror itself that he is making his faces in, connected to every possible face to be made in that mirror. Why is the Empress pregnant? The Empress is pregnant. Hakma is personified by the divine masculine. Bina is personified by the divine feminine. Thing's gonna happen for sure when you put them two. Right? Okay, goodness gracious, man. Let's stick to this text. Thus, all magical operations by the personal consciousness are indirect. The actual operation is performed by the subconscious level of the mind, working through the appropriate images. This is one of the most important laws of magic. As the reader will see at a later stage, it is possible to make our own tree. What? I get to make my own tree? In fact, we must do so if we are to do any real work with this system. But this does not mean that we should blindly accept the classifications handed down to us from our more ancient brethren. In this matter, we should be ourselves originators. It must be remembered that with the increasing knowledge, which is such a feature of our present times, there are so many new avenues of thought which were closed to our predecessors. And from those new thought images, we may construct what might be termed an up-to-date tree of life. Indeed, it is necessary that we should do this, but the true apprentice of magic learns also to follow the example given in the New Testament of the wise householder, who brings forth from his treasure house things old and new. That's some extremely wise advice right there. It's wise advice because in creating your own tree, don't forget to include some of the stuff from the previous one. Because, your first instinct will be to just fill it up with brand new stuff. But then how will you know that everything checks out properly? What's he mean by building your own tree? Very simple. My example to you about God looking in the mirror and the reflections, that's my own tree. I've come up with my own metaphors because I understand what these different levels are talking about. So when you work with this tree, you study it, you understand it, you start to create your own metaphors, your own symbols. This is how you personally understand the tree. Because if you take Dion Fortune's or W. Butler's or Israel Regardie's definitions of the tree, you're working with theirs, but you're not touching the spirit of it. To touch the spirit of that tree, you got to understand what they did, and then you do it yourself. You learn from example, then you do it, right? You don't change the game stepping into the door. You don't just walk in, oh, I'm about to flip everything upside down. No, you learn how the system works, then you flip it upside down because you know how it works. You can't flip it upside down unless you know how it works. So you study, and you understand it. And once you start getting that understanding, you start building your own tree by coming up with your own metaphors, with your own symbols for what this stuff means. And you don't just take your new stuff. You make sure that you keep the old in order to cross-reference and to check it. Study the cover of the Mystical Kabbalah. If you can find a big version of this, you'll see that within each of these sephiroths are symbols. This is literally a penis covered by a cloth. This is literally a vagina, right? Why would they do that? This, you've got a king sitting on a throne with a pyramid in front of him, holding an orb with a cross on top. Here you've got a king on a chariot with a sword, brandishing a sword, ready to go to war, right? Notice how these two touch each other, And you've also got this one, which is a king on a throne, and next to him is a child, and the cross behind him, and the six-pointed Merkaba. Why? Right? You got three kings here. A king at war, a king at peace, and a king that balances the whole thing. And why is this attributed to Christ? Right, so that doesn't mean come in here and, oh, I don't like Jesus, so I'm going to put Horus here. Well, do you know why you would put Horus there? Like, does it make sense? Here you've got Venus, right? The artwork of what's his name? Botticelli. The picture of Venus behind that rose. Why? Here you literally have an androgynous angel, right? He's both sexes, holding a scale. Why? Here you have a naked man standing in front of the moon with a rainbow wrapped around it. Why? And here you have a princess sitting on a throne, surrounded by four colors, a double cube, in between the arches, much like the high priestess. Why? So what happens is once you study this enough, you'll begin to create your own symbolism for what these things represent. Good stuff, man. This is a great book. I love this book. I love this author, man. That's a good point. Oh, yeah, that is a good point. Sunshine Chick says William Gray placed tarot differently. You're absolutely right, and I forgot about that. No, 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 no. Yeah. William Gray. William Gray. This is W. Butler. William Gray placed the tarot differently. Yes, yes. Ron Fiasco says, I found it damn near impossible to fashion a system without utilizing a previous system to springboard off of. Exactly. That would be like fashioning a brand new alphabet. Right, right. You have to model it after something else. Framestar Film says, what does it mean to you, your gnosis and correspondence to what's gone before? Right. Build upon a foundation that is solid. All right, let's keep going. Dimensional Legend says it's the Malkuth Tree of Life. Yes, it's also the Tree of Life, Tree of Life. It's a pattern. It's a pattern that can be found within itself. You know, we can make it extremely complex or we can make it extremely simple. Whatever is useful and appropriate is the answer. Although our forefathers were ignorant of much that is elementary knowledge to us, they still had keen minds and still encountered the same basic human problems that perplex and worry their clever descendants of today. In the established system of relationships, which is the Tree of Life, they found a key to open the door of wisdom. And their meditations thereon have built up into the egregore of the tree much that still has a value today. So when we make our very modern tree, it is well to realize that if we in this way make our contribution to that group thought form, it, in its turn, can work through the archaic images within our deeper minds. The glyph of the tree may be used for meditation purposes and also as a plan upon which practical, objective work may be done. But these two aspects of work upon the tree, we may term them the subjective and objective aspects, use different diagrams, different in color, that is, for the method of using the forces in meditation, is different from that of using them in practical magical work, and this difference is shown in the colors of the tree. How many of you all have seen that, you know, there are different colors for the Tree of Life? The reason being for that is, depending on what specific work you're doing with the tree, it's typically going to affect a specific aspect of your consciousness. Might be working with the dense aspect of your consciousness or the very subtle aspect of your consciousness. And it's split up into roughly 4 different categories. So these different color scales of the tree help the subconscious mind to tap into itself depending on the level. When considering the colors used for the tree diagrams, it should be remembered that for objective magical work and ritual initiation, the psychic structures which are built up are linked with the appropriate Sephiroth, and these are colored in a higher scale than the connecting paths in between them. Dan Fortune talked about this too. Let's read that again. When considering the colors used for the tree diagrams, it should be remembered that for objective magical work, right? For objective magical work, stuff you're trying to do in the objective world that you can sense with your 5 senses, and for ritual initiation. Somebody asked about how do you know you're initiated in the clip-off? Somebody asked that in the chat. Excuse me, Kabbalah. We'll check this out. The psychic structures which are built up are linked with the appropriate Sephiroth. Okay, so the psychic structures, they're built up and they're linked with the appropriate Sephiroth, whether you're working with Gibarah, Chesed, Yesod, whatever. And these are colored in a higher scale than the paths between them, the connecting paths between them. So if you really look on the cover of the Mystical Kabbalah and most versions of the tree that people use, the Sephiroth color scale is different from the color scale of the paths. right? One uses the king scale, one uses the queen scale. The reason for that is objective magical work and ritual initiation. That's why it's colored this way. That's why that's the most popular color scheme, because most people want to do either objective magical work and or ritual initiation. So the tree that we're studying, that we've been studying, is the tree of life for that specific purpose. But for meditation work concerned with action upon our own weaknesses, the psychic structure or the astral temple should be in the same color scale as the connecting paths. This enables one to work upon the corresponding center in one's own aura. In this connection, it will be seen that the cards of the tarot deck are allotted to the paths of the tree, and by meditation on the card concerned, the appropriate center may be stimulated. Direct concentration upon the psychic centers is inadvisable. The conscious mind can so easily upset their delicate equilibrium. Careful study of the books already written upon the Tree of Life will enable the student to use the Tree of Life in its different color scales. And for this reason, we will not here give detailed instructions. If we indicate the principles, then the practical use of them can be essayed by the student. And it is far better that he should be allowed to make his own approach, even though it may be faulty in its initial stages, than simply follow blindly the instructions of another. At least so we think. Y'all all right? Still with me? Got 3 more pages left. Three and a half. Circle of Mystics says still with you. Stray Panther gives me a thumbs up. And Molly says yes. Somebody just tapped the heart button. Cool beans. Cool beans. My people are in the house. The roof is on fire. We don't need no water. Let that motherfucker burn. Burn, motherfucker. So young folks don't know about that. Dara Holland says, we here. Unicorn. Ron Fiasco says, haha, yep, in and out, but mostly in. Hell yeah. Anna Molly says, eating chicken nugs. Those poor nugs. Sunshine Chick says here. All right. Let's keep it going. Almost there. Ashley B says, painting and listening. Peace. Are you going to paint? Are you going to post what you're painting? Framestar Film says pin. Excellent. When using the glyph of the Tree of Life, whether for meditation or for magical purposes, it is important to remember that the symbols must be used systematically, in accordance with their functional relationship. For this relationship is the very essence of the tree, as we've already pointed out. The tree is a diagram of relationships. If you guys don't remember anything else, please remember that about the Tree of Life. It's not a map of a place. It's a diagram of relationships. That's how you're going to further your understanding of this thing. It's a diagram of relationships. And guess what? So is the astral plane. The astral plane is not a place. It's not a place that you step foot in. It's not a place that is separated by space and distance and time. The astral plane is exactly like the Tree of Life. The astral plane is a place that is Connected by relationships. Connected by relationships. So for me to have this little bitty idol of Cortana, she is a character that represents something in a story, in a game. Now, I wonder how what she represents manifests in my life, right? She's artificial intelligence. She's data. She's information. She's a helper. A lifesaver, mind you. And what she's done for Master Chief, the relationship between her and Master Chief, I wonder if I have that relationship with an aspect of myself or technology or whatever. It's about relationships, y'all. It's not about a place. It's about relationships. Seek the relationship, not the literal logical definition. The literal logical definition might please the ego and the conscious mind, but the symbolic relationship, now you're talking to the subconscious. WBT, peace, peace. WBT, man, I owe you an apology. Really, we should have just did it on Saturday, but I ended up waiting around, and my partner has a different schedule than I, so the whole thing kind of just didn't happen. So I apologize for that, man. But I do still want to get with you and do that at your earliest convenience. All right, so again, one more time. The tree is a diagram of relationships. It is also advisable to work with the opposites, i.e. meditation or magical operation, using the sphere of Mars, should be followed by one using the symbolism of Jupiter. In this way, a balanced development is assured, and we are told that equilibrium is the basis of the great work. Right? So, when he said that, you guys understand what that means. If you look at the tree, all the different Sephirah are in relationship with each other. So check it out now. If you're so-called doing work in one sphere, you have got to make room for the other sphere that it's connected to. That's how you maintain balance. And let me tell you from experience, if you skip that, you will feel it. It will manifest. Now, how it manifests for you, that's up to you. But if you don't want to add unnecessary complications, make sure that when you're working with this tree, no matter what Sephirah, you work with the corresponding one. And if you're working with Yesod, you can correspond it with Malkuth. Or if you're bold and spicy, you can correspond it with Tifereth. Ron Fiasco says, balance one with its opposite. Exactly. And that is that's not like, oh, you better do it or else. No. That is another representation of just how much this tree of life is all about relationships. There is no working with one sphere. There is no work. You might focus and zoom in on one, but you're still working with all the others in relationship to the one you're working with. So to make that process smoother for you, go ahead and make sure that you pair your work with the corresponding Sephirah. Ron Fiasco says that's an early mistake I think everyone makes. Yes, it is, exactly. And I didn't even know that it was an issue until I started to learn and read, and I see stuff like this that says it's advisable to pair your working with the corresponding Sephirah. And once I started doing that, I saw a lot of the difficulties I was having was due to my work being imbalanced. In fact, I am where I am now as far as how I consider myself with this magic. I feel confident enough to sit up here on God's green YouTube and help to break down these concepts in front of other people confidently, because I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done a lot of unbalanced magic. I've done all manner of unbalanced magic, right? And I can look back and see, you know what? I could have done that better if I did it this way. Oh, that's why this happened, because of this. I can see that now. So don't be afraid of or run from making a mistake. It's not going to kill you. It might make things a little bit rough for a minute, but the only way that you'll be able to master what you're doing is if you make those mistakes first, or if you learn from somebody who's made those mistakes and you heed that advice. This is particularly important when we attempt to use the tree for such things as psychic diagnosis. Dream interpretation by the use of the tree is a most promising line of work, since the forces portrayed by the symbolism of the Sephiroth are to be found in the microcosm of the soul of man, as well as in the macrocosm of the outer universe. As the life force descends into manifestation in the personality, it may be deflected or thwarted at any level, and the type of symbolism shown in the prevailing dreams of the patient will show which Sephirotic level is at fault. 11/11. Happy 11/11, everybody. Hakeem Lamidi. Peace, peace. Kevin Wise, peace. I don't think I said what's up to you today. And if I missed anybody, of course it's not personal, you know. I know sometimes what pops up in the chat may not be in order. Sometimes some things I don't see until later. But if I did not wish you peace and good evening, I absolutely do it now. Peace and good evening. When considering when considering this matter of the color scales, it must be realized that the colors are not purely arbitrary, but are based upon a real relationship between them and the forces they represent. Again, those colors are not just picked just because somebody wanted to paint pretty colors, or they said, oh, we need a color here. It must be realized that the colors are not purely arbitrary, but are based upon a real relationship between them and the forces they represent. This relationship may be based upon a common identity, or maybe one which has been given by the meditations of generations of students, and which thereby is built into the egregore of the tree. The same is true of all the symbols used on the tree. They have this twofold nature. So I've had people ask, and I love questions, even if they're a bit harsh, and some people are like, well, why should we even listen to this guy or these people? Like, I don't know these people. How do I even know what they're saying is true? Why did they pick these colors, etc., etc.? And those are valid questions. Like, you don't have to, follow this stuff. You don't have to. Nobody's making you. However, understand what he just talked about. He answered all that on the previous page. He talked about how the work of this collective group, right? This Golden Dawn system, the Inner Light Society, etc. What they've done is they've practiced and they've done this work over years, right? These are not people on the internet who just talk about it and you don't know if they're doing work or not. They were in each other's faces meditating, right? You can see what they're wearing, you can see what their hair looks like, you can smell the breath. They were in each other's faces meditating, practicing, doing these things. And over consistent meditation and practices, they've come to find commonalities in their work, and they list these commonalities, they write these commonalities down, they've documented them. And I say that opposed to people on the internet because this is from a different era. This work comes from a different era. And guess what? Even before that, they were even more intense. These people lived, breathed, and died this information, right? So when you see these colors, or when you see these symbols, or when you see these different things that they talk about you must do to do the ritual, it's not about dogma, and it's not just made up. This is what they have received, and this is what worked for them when they were doing these rituals. So that's why we have these colors. That's why we have these symbols. That's why they advise you to do the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, and different things like that. because they've done it and they've had a specific, it's literally a science. And the way that you can know that you're tapping in is you start to get some of the similar results. Your truth says, thank you, Titan, for your channel. I've been binging all your book videos. Awesome, possum. Good to have you here. Framestar Films posted the Golden Dawn color scale. Check that link out before the stream closes. You might want to check that link and maybe bookmark it, or maybe keep it in a different tab. I don't know if you guys are simply on phone or on the PC or desktop, but maybe tap that link and then open up a new tab and come back to it later. You'll notice that when you meditate, sometimes, and your mind is actually clear, you'll start to see a color. And that's one of the most pure forms of contact. The conscious mind doesn't know what to do with it, right? You'll just see this rosy pink. And the conscious mind doesn't know what to do with it. It's trying to force a form or a label out of it. But the subconscious is getting into contact with a specific energy, a specific force of the cosmos. That's why you're seeing that color. Have any of you guys ever been awake, like you're sleeping, but then you wake up, but you don't open your eyes yet, and you start to see a color or a shape? Like right there on your eyelids. What happens for me, and this has been happening for about a year now, since I was doing a lot of Tat with Shooty, doing a lot of this tantric meditation. Like what happens for me now, when I wake up, I see the yantra vayu on my eyelids every morning. And sometimes when I go in the shower, I see this, the literal yantra appears on my eyelids, and I'm not even making it up. And I'm not forcing it or imagining it. Like literally, when I come to awake, I don't usually like just jump out of bed. Like I come to consciousness and I might try to think about the dream or just kind of sit there. And what happens is that the yantra for Vayu appears on my eyelids every single time. It's so cool. But it's that means something, that represents something. That's the air element, right? And that also represents the mental plane. So you'll notice that when you meditate, and sometimes when you wake up, you might see a specific color or a specific shape. Try your best to remember, try your best to document, try your best to take note of that, because it might have something to do with your current level. There's a reason why they came up with these symbols and these colors, because they represent what stage you're on. They represent what level. Like, I'm telling you, this stuff is mapped out. It's not just a wild, wild west out here. Like, oh, well, maybe this, maybe not. No, when you're seeing these colors and these symbols, it's a representation of where you are spiritually, where you are with your work. It's really cool. And that hasn't been something that happened to me before. Like once it was triggered and unlocked, it hasn't stopped. It's even to the point, like if I try to focus on it too hard, it'll dissolve, it'll go away. I just let it be, and it's clear as day. If you look at the card, or if you look at the Tatwa itself, the yantra for Vayu, it's an orange background and a blue circle, or a gray hexagram. And that's what appears. Orange background, gray hexagram that slowly shifts into a circle and back into a hexagram over and over and over again. Now, if you recall from Dharana Darshan, the good Swami Niranjan Ananda Saraswati talks about that this is happening in the Chitta Kasha. This is happening in the Chitta Kasha. I mean, you could say that's an aspect of the astral plane. If I had to put a label on it, I would say it's where the etheric plane bridges upon the astral, where it touches, where the etheric plane touches the astral. I would say that's the Chitta Kasha, and that's where you have these visualizations and imaginations. That's not quite a dream, and it's also not quite a daydream. It's like a natural daydream. It's nothing that you're forcing. And I think that the most time that that's active is just when you start to wake up and just when you start to go to sleep. And this can be achieved intentionally when you meditate. So it starts to connect, right? This is how you enter the astral plane consciously. Meditation, working with that pre-sleep, pre-waking phase. This is how you tap into it. And you have an opportunity literally every single day. Now, most of us don't remember to do it because we go to sleep exhausted. But if you can hold your attention and your awareness and just try it, you'll start to find that at that point where you're starting to phase into sleep, it's a very special period because your consciousness has withdrawn itself from the five senses and you're purely focused on that etheric plane. This is why it's a great practice to go to sleep with your sigil on your mind, with your intention on your mind. One of the practices I did was I used to fall asleep visualizing the tree of life right above me. Not just the tree of life though. I'd have the cards, the tarot cards of the associated paths on each one of the paths. So the tree of life was built up like how you see it inside the cover of Robert Wang's Kabbalistic Tarot. Trav, I don't have that book, so I don't know what you're talking about. Well, why are you even watching this channel? Kind of like this. You might find a Google image of it, but you'll see a map of the tree of life, and it'll have the different paths with the associated tarot card. So what I memorize it, and I'll try to go to sleep with that image in my mind. And what happens is as you cross over into the dream, you're focused on that diagram. And what happened with me, at least, not every time, but sometimes, I would have specific dreams with tarot symbolism. Now, check it out. Which tarot cards, which tarot images does your subconscious mind choose to pick? The ones that represent the forces that are very active in your life. That's an example of how you can work with Kabbalistic magic. That's an easy example. So the work you have to do is memorize what cards are associated with what paths on the tree, lay down consciously, and visualize that on top of you as you drift into sleep. That's an easy way to do it. Peace, MC Maestro. Peace, Christian Black. Okay. Well, when considering this matter of the color scales, it must be realized that the colors are not purely arbitrary, but are based upon a real relationship between them and the forces they represent. This relationship may be based upon a common identity, or may be one which has been given by the meditations of generations of students, and which, thereby, is built into the egregore of the tree. The same is true of all the symbols used on the tree. They have this twofold nature. The student will have perceived that the tree of life is a stupendous mnemonic system, a system which makes use of the natural modes of action of the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious levels of the soul. The tree of life is a system which makes use of the natural modes of action of the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious levels of the soul. He may therefore ask, why could we not make up a tree of our own and use it for auto-suggestive purposes? Why bother with the symbolism of the past? It is, of course, quite possible, as we have already stated, to make such an up-to-date tree. But, as we already possess, in our deep unconscious, all the archaic symbols of the racial past, we may as well use them in our conscious work. thus linking our conscious and subconscious mental levels. So look, even though you might consider some of these symbols out of date and ancient and old, don't think that you're so brand new and exotic, fresh out the pack. What do I call it? Busting out the plastic. What's the song say? I'm out the plastic. Don't think you're so fresh out the plastic that these ancient symbols mean nothing to your subconscious mind. Just like we talked about the ancestor altars, you're built upon the past. You're built upon the people that came before you. Literally, your DNA, your skin, your organs, the way that you look. It's all based upon people that came before you. So it's not just DNA. DNA is the physical aspect of it. On the metaphysical aspect, there's a collective memory. And all of these symbols, if you focus on them and allow yourself to come into an unconscious or a subconscious state, these symbols still retain their meaning, right? You ever wonder why people are so terrified of spiders? Or why people are afraid of serpents and snakes? Where does that come from? It's something that comes genetically and metaphysically. It isn't simply learned. Some things come from the racial past, as he said. Symbols have meaning to you. DB31, peace. Yips. Sul. Since the appeal of any system of suggestion is to the subconscious, it is evident that a system which uses the archaic symbols will be far better able to affect the subconscious levels, since it speaks in their language, than an arbitrary conscious symbol system would do. A system which uses archaic symbols will be far better able to affect the subconscious levels, since it speaks in their language. We come now to a very important point. When we study the various forms of musical instrument, apart from percussion instruments, we find there is a clear division in two classes. In one, which includes a piano, the organ, and various woodwind instruments, the notes are already made for the musician. He's about to say something that Dion Fortune mentioned. Remember in the Mystical Kabbalah where she talked about making your own notes? Let's get into it. So he says in the one category, which includes the piano, the organ, and the various woodwind instruments, the notes are already made for the musician. He depresses the keys of the organ or the stops of the woodwind, and the corresponding musical notes are sounded. In the second class, which is composed of the stringed instruments, the musician makes his own notes by his fingering, i.e., he shortens or lengthens the effective vibratory length of the string, thus causing it to emit the chosen notes when put into vibration by the bow or plectrum. When working with the tree in practical magic, we are in the position of the musician of the second class. We first learn how to produce the right psychic notes as required. This is done by using the symbols of the tree as objects in our meditation. Unless we've done this properly, our magic will usually be ineffective. Did y'all get that? I know that those of y'all who have been working with the Kabbalah for a time understand that, but for somebody who hasn't done work with the Kabbalah, does that part make sense? Let me know in the chat. Because on one aspect, you've got piano and keyboard and organ. You can literally press the C note. You can press the E note. You can press the F, right? It's there for you, cut out. But when it comes to stringed instruments, violin's right, really look at that. A violin doesn't have any frets. At least a guitar and a bass usually has frets, but a violin doesn't have frets. So literally you have to learn what that vibration sounds like and place your finger in the right place to get the specific note you want. Do you see the difference between those two styles of music or playing? So think about the Kabbalah here. What we're dealing with this Kabbalistic symbolism is very much like playing the violin. You have to find out where the note is and press it down and causes that vibration so that you can play that note at a time. It's just like the guitar, right? I mean, if you play the guitar, you have to do this specific chord and move to this chord, and you have to hit it right. Same thing with this tree of life. So when you visualize a specific symbol that is associated with a specific sephirah, that's kind of like playing the guitar and placing your fingers in a specific place to get a specific note. So when you visualize this, when you meditate on that, you're causing a vibration to happen within yourself. You're unleashing a vibration from the subconscious mind. Let me know if that hits. Thank you, Dara Holland. Rip me out the plastic, got me acting brand new. I'm gonna get it right next time. Rip me out the plastic, got me acting brand new. Ashley B says, I used to have dreams of snakes often as a child, but a little less frequently as an adult. I was usually afraid in the dreams, but now I want one. After learning the symbolism, I'm much less afraid. Christian Black says, even with the voice too, and mimicry, throat singing versus screaming versus tremolo, etc., etc. That's a good point, yes. So we're working with the manipulation of vibration. Musicians may know this better than other people. Guess what? Not only musicians, artists know this as well, because it takes a certain kind of skill to capture a specific emotion visually, doesn't it? Hell, it takes a certain kind of skill to capture a specific concept that can be tasted. See, art is consumed by the five senses. And art can be produced as sound, as vision, as scent. There are scent artists, right? I absolutely love vanilla scented smells. And in my search, I found that some don't quite hit the mark and some really do. Taste, right? I love me some hot sauce. And I literally have invested in the search for the best hot sauce. I've told this story before. Traveled around my city, trying all the hot sauces in every restaurant. And then I finally found one that was just the right level of spicy and flavor. Howling Monkey Armadillo, that's what it was. And I ordered a couple of bottles from Amazon. $20 a bottle. But it was the perfect hot sauce at the time. And then later I found a different one. But the five senses take in vibration and you consider it pleasing or displeasing. It isn't something random. You have to hit it right on the mark to get a specific result. Same thing goes with this tree of life work. If there's something you're trying to manifest, something you're trying to reach or tap into or whatever, you got to get precise with it. It's just like playing the guitar. It's just like cooking a specific dish or creating a specific smell, making a specific audio sound, a specific visual scene, right? Or a specific texture. There's many different ways to go into this. Christian Black says, yep, and writers, poets, what story are we telling? What emotion do we convey and how? Like you said, it's not why or what, it's how. Yes, yes. All right, Sheikh This says 11:33. Right. We got to go ahead and wrap this up. So in our meditation, we take the various symbols of the tree and consider them in their two aspects. For all these symbols have two sides to their nature. There's the form side, i.e. the actual pictorial symbol itself, and there's the force side, which is the energy of which the symbol is an expression. This energy exists under its appropriate aspect on all levels of the soul and the universe. But on the plane of the astral light, it is manifest as emotional energy. You've heard me say many times that the astral plane is the plane of pure emotion. And this is what I mean. So look what he said. There's two sides of every symbol on the tree. You got the form side, which is the actual visual thing you see, and the force side, which is the energy that exists behind, the energy of the soul that exists behind that symbol, right? And on the astral plane, guess what? It manifests as emotional energy. Some of us love food. Have you ever cooked an exquisite meal or ever had someone cook you an exquisite meal? It's a different experience sitting there eating that. There's an explosion of emotion versus just eating some spam and ramen noodles or something that you don't really care for. You might just scarf that down and be done with it. But when you eat something that was prepared and is wonderful and it's beautiful and it smells amazing, it's an experience eating that. I love that. Same thing with music. You got some music that's just kind of, get you through the day, turn the radio on and keep it pushing. But then you got songs that really move you, right? Same thing with visuals in movies. You might watch something just to pass the time, or you might watch something that damn near changes your life. Some tap into the astral plane, some don't. In building up our symbol system in meditation, we have to learn to link deliberately and consciously a symbol with its appropriate force, and to become so expert at it that the mere fact of the symbol arising in consciousness brings with it a surge of emotional energy of the type associated with that symbol on the tree. Equally, we must be able, by opening ourselves to a certain aspect of emotional energy, to perceive inwardly with the mind's eye the symbol which represents that energy. He's speaking tantric right here. He's talking tantric. You will see this same concept expressed in that book, Taught with Shruti. Those of you who read that, doesn't she talk about this right here? That's why I keep saying an explosion of emotional energy, because that was the phrase that she used in Taught with Shruti. Swami Satyananda Saraswati. Dimensional Legend says, but I'm not going to do meditation yet until I become more stronger first. Well, I'm going to put it to you straight up. Straight up. I ain't going to sugarcoat it. That's an excuse. And not a very good one. How do you think you become stronger first? You have to try. You have to apply yourself. You don't do anything once you're ready. You do it and then you become ready. If you study entrepreneurs or high-performing athletes, they will tell you, spend less time thinking about it and more time implementing, more time taking action. Do it, and then you figure it out as you go. But to say, I'm not going to do it until I'm stronger, until I learn more, that's an excuse. And you can say that for the rest of your life. You're not going to get stronger unless you jump in to the gym and start pushing those weights. Do it now. Do it now. In this technical meditation work, the linking up of the astral energies with their corresponding forms is best done by building a fantasy scene based upon the emotional significance of the symbol. The more clearly the fantasy is built, the more closely do you come into contact with the energy concerned. That's good. That's good. In this technical meditation work, the linking up of the astral energies with their corresponding forms is best done by building a fantasy scene based upon what? The emotional significance of the symbol. Hey, guess what? Y'all do this all the time. You do this all the time. The more clearly the fantasy is built, the more closely do you come into contact with the energy concerned. This is one aspect of the work. The spiritual exercises of Ignatius Loyola, who was the founder of the Jesuit Society, are a good example of what is wanted, though they are purely Christian and Roman Christian at that. Well, damn. The fact he had to make that specification, I felt some kind of way. The complementary aspect is developed by consciously linking the symbol with the energy by meditating upon the emotional charge behind it, and then allowing various emotional states to develop within our minds, visualizing the appropriate symbol forms at the same time. After steady practice on this, there will come a time where the mere thought of the emotion will throw up into the waking consciousness the symbol form concerned. Ooh. So imagine thinking about prosperity and wealth, and automatically your sigil pops up, right? Because see, before you think of it backwards, right? You think of doing your sigil, ooh, 7777. Before you think about focusing on your sigil and hoping to tap into the emotion, well, you know you cross the barrier where the feeling comes up and then that sigil comes up with it. That's how you want to do it. When this has been attained, we have begun to work with the alphabet of a new language, and we learn to put together the various energized symbols in such a way as to build up what might be described as the language of the mysteries. When these images and their corresponding forces have been so linked, we may use them in two ways. In the receptive mode, if we have learnt the psychological trick of allowing these images to rise, which we discussed earlier on, we may use these linked symbols to indicate to our waking consciousness the fluctuating pressures and tides of the emotional self. And since this emotional side of our nature is continually being affected by the forces and intelligences of the astral light, our symbols, as they rise on the mental screen, will be a translation into physical terms of the awareness on its own plane of the astral body. In other words, we have a controlled and disciplined psychism. Such a system of psychic perception has the great advantage of being capable of check, since the sudden emergence of symbols of another type will show that the vision is mixed. With practice, this type of psychic perception becomes very accurate indeed, and merges into a form of direct perception of the astral levels without symbols. He just told you how to build up your psychic ability and how to be able to check to see if it's accurate. He just broke that down in one paragraph. He just broke it down in one paragraph. How does psychic ability work? Exactly like he said. You allow these images to rise to the surface, right? But guess what? You don't just see random images. Each of these images are connected to a specific energy that you've defined with your library of correspondences, right? So what comes to you is translated. Does anybody watch the show Ahsoka? I remember on like the first or second episode, where the witch lady was asking the ex Jedi dude, you know, about Ahsoka, like, what's she doing? Is she a threat? And he closed his eyes and he seemed to be going into like a trance, and then he came back with an answer. He pretty much gave like a parable, and then he said, you know, basically that she's coming. That's a lot how psychic ability works. If you receive these images, right, you allow these images to rise to the surface, and then you look at these symbols and you translate them, right, because they should be connected to some concept. You take those images, you take those concepts, and you make it make sense in context. The same way that you use tarot cards. Somebody may ask you a question, or you may ask yourself a question, and you shuffle those cards up, and the images that come out, those different cards. You interpret those images and what they represent in context with the question that was asked. Psychic ability is not about guessing. It's mostly about receiving. We may use these linked symbols to indicate to our waking consciousness the fluctuating pressures and tides of the emotional self. And since this emotional tide of our nature is continually being affected by the forces and intelligences of the astral light, our symbols, as they rise on the mental screen, will be a translation into physical terms of the awareness on its own plane of the astral body. So when you do that, when you receive that pressure in the form of symbols and images, this is literally you communicating with your astral body. And like I've been saying in my recent live streams, you must develop a language to communicate with the subconscious mind, a symbolic language. This form of psychic training is one of great value and has the advantage of being entirely under the control of the waking self. It is important to make this clear. In the Kabbalistic systems of psychic training, the various planes or vibration levels are kept isolated from one another. To use the expression coined by Swedenborg, they are discrete and not continuous. This means that the Kabbalistically trained psychic does not suffer from any sudden eruption of astral vision into his daily waking life. Only when he deliberately wills it are the veils between the physical and the inner levels removed. On the objective side, the discipline of the linking meditation allows the magician to construct his astral temple and charge it with the corresponding forces through the conscious manipulation of the symbols concerned. Last two paragraphs. It will be seen then that steady and prolonged meditation on the tree is necessary if any practical use is to be made of it. It may also be pointed out that since all the manifold objects of the physical life can be placed on their appropriate level of the tree, that the relationships existing between the various Sephirotic groupings will gradually build up an innate philosophic system within the mind of the magician. That's good, Christian Black. Christian Black says, I've been channeling symbols for the 360 degrees of the zodiac, and the foundation for my language is trust. Accepting the first thing and allowing it to develop into its own picture scene. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. This process is assisted by the use of what are known as seed meditations. In using these seed meditations, the particular statement is meditated upon and then passed down into the unconscious. It disappears, but at a later date, it reappears quite suddenly in consciousness together with a host of associated ideas, plus a realization of its true meaning, which would never have been obtained by mere conscious meditation upon it. All the symbols on the tree, and more importantly, the curious and cryptic yet Yetziratic texts, which are attributed to each path, can be used in seed meditations in this way. That's really good. That's kind of like what I was talking about as far as focusing on the tree while you fall asleep, right? So what did he say here? He said this process is assisted by the use of what is known as seed meditations. In using these seed meditations, the particular statement is meditated upon and then passed down into the unconscious. So you meditate on a certain symbol. You just meditate on a certain symbol. You're not looking for the answer to break through in meditation. You focus on it so that It can penetrate into the subconscious mind. Then you go about your business. He says it disappears, but at a later date, it reappears quite suddenly in the consciousness together with, right? So it doesn't come back void, it doesn't come back by itself. When you bury that sigil into the subconscious, it returns together with a host of associated ideas, plus a realization of its true meaning, which would never have been obtained by the mere conscious meditation upon it. That's how it works. When you sit there and you focus and you become one with the symbol, the answer, it doesn't always come right away. In fact, most of the time it doesn't. But you do the work anyway, and what you'll find is that later, as the symbol returns and resurfaces to your conscious mind, it came with some friends, which gives you a much more comprehensive picture of what you were, because you're not focused on a sigil or a symbol. What you're doing is you're tapping into the energy behind it. So when that energy returns, it's bringing other representations, other manifestations of itself. This is how you do it, man. This chapter revealed so much if you have the ears to hear it. So much if you have the ear. If you have this book, read this chapter again. Read it again. It disappears, but at a later date, it reappears quite suddenly in consciousness, together with a host of associated ideas, plus a realization of its true meaning, which would never have been obtained by the mere conscious meditation upon it. All the symbols on the tree, and more particularly the curious and cryptic yet erratic texts which are attributed to each path, all the symbols on the tree can be used in seed meditations in this way. All right. Lord have mercy. Oh boy, what a day. What a day. What a day. Okay, so that was the chapter 3 on the Tree of Life. I don't know why the hell I said we were going to read 5 chapters. That concludes part 1. We're getting to part 2 now, the training of the magician. I wonder what secrets Mr. Butler is going to reveal to us in the following pages. I'm excited for it, ready for it. Depending on whether or not my voice is still intact next Saturday, we will continue this journey. If not, then rest assured we'll resume in 2 weeks. But you've got the recordings if you wanted to go back over it. Hopefully you've been able to find a copy of this book. It's possible that a PDF exists. If not, no worries. I got you covered. Got you covered. Me and the unicorns and the Black Mermaid. All right, so this was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I learned some things. I hope you did too. Definitely going back over this chapter. I suggest you do as well because a lot of great info here. All right. So I'm probably off to play some Fortnite and to get some much needed rest. I'm excited about this epoch of time, the next couple of weeks and months, maybe even years. I hope that you have a reason to be excited too. If not, make one, right? Make one. It starts within. I mentioned before I was a bit down, but I didn't just magically come out of it. I hit a point where I was like, man, I'm tired of this. I'm ready to come back. I'm ready to be what I was and continue to experience my potential. I had that thought in my low moments. And I allowed my focus on that to manifest itself. So if you're going through a rough time right now, make the decision within that you're going to start having a good time, a pleasant time, a helpful time. Focus on that, stick with that, and don't settle for anything less. Make your life. Make your life. Make the world respond to you. Don't respond to the world. Make your world respond to you. All right? So peace to everyone, and thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Peace. Hazard Pie, did I meet you on Instagram from a comment? I think so. Your picture looks familiar. Ashley B, peace, and thank you for being here. Dara Holland, peace, peace. Have a great night. Dimensional Legend, thank you for your insights. Have a good night. Phoenix Wolfette, always great to see you as well. I hope you're having a beautiful night. Anna Molly, peace, peace to you. Thank you so much. A day brightener you are. Society Ejects, peace, brother, peace. Good to see you. You're coming a long way with your visual work, and I'm happy to see it. Society Eject says, hey guys, LOL, I'm in North Carolina to see Travis Scott, but they canceled the show, so I'm here. Oh man. It wasn't the right Travis. Ron Fiasco, thank you for your insight. Have a great night. Christian Black, peace, peace. Christian Black says the improvement though. Look how far we've all come. It's godly. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it, man. I love it. I mean, life is beautiful when you look at it the right way. It really is. It don't have to be gloom and doom and gloom and pain. Like, I had enough of that, man. I'm not gonna waste any more of my days on that. Life is just as beautiful as it is ugly. It's your choice what you focus on. Cosmic Traveler, peace, peace and good night. Cosmic Traveler says, thank you again, Trav. Great value added. I love it. Love it. All right, my people. See you on Tuesday for the podcast. And stay tuned. Cooking up some great stuff. I'm sure that you will absolutely love it. I hope that you're cooking up some great stuff too. Tap into that creativity. Life's good, man. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. As W.E. Butler said in this book, all magic starts from within and it's expressed outwards. It doesn't start on the outside, it starts on the inside and you push it out. So make the decision for what you want. Find the corresponding symbol that connects to it. Tap in. Tap in. Alright, so this is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I love you. Peace.